I become the Demon King in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Simple and Unpretentious Stock Trading Secrets. Slander. This is blatant slander, Lin Hao refuted righteously. The reason why I, the stock god of the Shunmiao Bureau, have been able to dominate the stock market for so many years is because of my foresight, keen intuition and rich theoretical knowledge. First plan which companies boss to kidnap, and then use leverage to short sell. This is called foresight. Zheng Xian in the video rolled his eyes. After the stock price goes down, buy the bottom, and then release the person and say it was a misunderstanding, and raise the stock price to cash out at a high position. This is called keenness. Then you can't deny that I have rich theoretical knowledge, otherwise how can I kidnap one? Lin Hao was still stubborn. Bah. Every bet is accurate. Your theoretical knowledge refers to the knowledge of making chronic poisons. Zheng Xian glared at Lin Hao. It's enough for others to fleece the sheep once, but you are good. You stare at him and fleece him to death. The boss you kidnapped was hospitalized for examination. There was no problem at first. After you cashed out at a high position, various problems were suddenly found, and then you were forced to short sell. This is Lin Hao's simple and unpretentious stock trading secret. Zheng Xian solemnly warned, Shanghai and Shenzhen have already blacklisted you. We're on our side of the Hong Kong stock market now, so we can't let you mess around anymore. U.S. stocks, Stark Industries, are you coming? Lin Hao didn't bother to argue. Come on, Zheng Xian decisively said, I'll have my institutions prepare the funds immediately. Who can resist money? The SHIEA has 150,000 mouths to feed, and no amount of funding could possibly satisfy them. Stop dithering. Follow my instructions when the time comes. Lin Hao hung up. After leaving Tony Stark's villa, Lin Hao headed for Wall Street, the financial center of the United States. This street, just a third of a mile long and 11 meters wide, is home to the offices of the managers of banks, insurance companies, shipping companies, and railroads owned by conglomerates like Rothschild, Morgan, Rockefeller, Goldman Sachs, and DuPont. It also boasts the renowned New York Stock Exchange. This conglomerate is the headquarters of international capital giants. Lin Hao's current status on Wall Street would only be considered a small fortune, barely enough to gain access to the VIP lounge. During the 5 years the androids operated in America, Lin Hao had used multiple identities to visit the New York Stock Exchange, becoming somewhat of a familiar face. Mr. Lin, I've been waiting for you. Albert Ellis, a well-known Wall Street stockbroker and one of Lin Hao's hired guns for the past few years, greeted him with a touch of professional courtesy. When they first met 5 years ago, Albert Ellis hadn't had much of an impression of the young Asian man, treating him with a simple courtesy. He assumed he was just some rich kid, riding on his family's wealth to prove himself on Wall Street, ready to be taught a harsh lesson and return to his leisurely days. He never expected his foresight in the financial markets to be miraculous. After just a few trades, his initial investment had multiplied nearly 100-fold. Albert no longer dared to underestimate this wealthy young man, and instead secretly joined his trades, multiplying his assets dozens of times over the years and instantly establishing a name for himself on Wall Street. Learning that Lin Hao's ancestors were of Chinese descent, Albert diligently taught himself Chinese to serve this god of wealth well, and now can communicate effectively. Unfortunately, the god of wealth rarely visited Wall Street, sometimes only once a year, leaving Albert yearning for him constantly. However, whenever the god of wealth came, he generally made a profit, the difference being the amount. The few times he lost money were due to sudden, aggressive market manipulation by large investors, but he quickly exited without causing any major problems. Albert didn't know that he was just one of Lin Hao's pawnshops, and those losses were staged by Lin Hao himself, who used other pawnshops to make up for them. Otherwise, he would have been consistently profitable, which would have been too conspicuous. Lin Hao operated under many identities, and the SHIER controlled even more accounts. Each entry into the market was decentralized, ensuring that U.S. financial regulators wouldn't detect any abnormalities. Today, Albert received a call from Lin Hao and immediately canceled other client appointments to await the god of wealth's arrival. Entering the VIP room, Albert greeted him attentively, carefully inquiring, Mr. Lin, what are your plans this time? $5 million, tenfold leverage, shorting Stark Industries, Lin Hao replied casually. Huh? Even though he knew Lin Hao's past, Albert was still surprised. Shorting Stark Industries. Stark Industries has been on an upward trend for the past 6 months, with almost no decline. Incredulous at Lin Hao's choice, Albert quickly shared his intelligence. Although he didn't attend the military awards ceremony last night, there's also news from the Pentagon that the Air Force intends to cut Stark Industries' orders for next year, but other companies can't match Stark Industries, with its genius, Tony Stark, in the field of high-tech weapons. Don't underestimate the informational resources of Wall Street stockbrokers. They knew what happened last night before the market even opened this morning. Are you telling me how to do things? Lin Hao glanced at Albert. I wouldn't dare, Albert smirked. Of course, he didn't dare offend the god of wealth, but Stark Industries was all green, with not a single sign of red. Playing it safe, Albert didn't dare follow suit this time. Quickly, Albert completed the necessary operations, and Lin Hao left, satisfied. With the news still about 10 hours away, Stark Industries' stock price was bound to plummet when the market opened tomorrow. Stark Industries' strength rests on Tony Stark alone. His unparalleled talent allows Stark Industries to manufacture high-tech weapons far superior to those of other companies. However, this is also Stark Industries' greatest weakness. The more trust investors place in Tony Stark, the more panic they'll feel upon learning of his misfortune. After leaving in a car, Lin Hao, wearing a different disguise, soon entered the stock exchange and performed the same operation. Sir, would you like to invest? A stockbroker approached Lin Hao, rapidly offering a sales pitch. I have a few good stocks, now's a good time to buy. The man before him was middle-aged, but he lacked the typically portly build of middle-aged American men. Instead, he appeared lean. His shirt was a good brand, but worn, with frayed cuffs. His suit, a classic American burl cut, was noticeably oversized, also showing the marks of age. Hey, Adam, another stockbroker approached quickly, dressed in Armani, his sleek, three-dimensional cut a touch of sophistication evident even to the average person. You're a seasoned broker, too. Don't you need me to tell you the rules of Wall Street? Sorry, Adam Smith, realizing Lin Hao was his client, turned and walked away, hunched over. After sending away the colleague who had tried to steal his business, the man put on a warm smile and said to Lin Hao, Mr. Kurosaki, please come in. Lin Hao glanced back at the unfortunate man and heard a flurry of whispers. Poor old Adam, the best thing he should be doing right now isn't selling stocks, but getting a divorce. His wife is his biggest bad asset, he doesn't dare. If he divorces, the court will award him half his property, and he'll have to pay child support, which would wipe out his other half, and he doesn't own his daughter, but Mrs. Smith is really hot. Have you tried it too, also? You're such a good kid. No wonder you got Adam drunk at the last party and offered to take him home. Hey, no one noticed Adam Smith gritting his teeth, his eyes blazing with anger as he hunched over. Lin Hao gave him another look before heading back to the VIP room to complete his transaction. When leaving, he deliberately went around to Adam Smith's workstation and slipped a black videotape into his briefcase. Chapter 27 Can You Get Off My Wife? Adam Smith, 39, spent the first 3 decades of his life as a true success story of a humble man rising to prominence. As a child, he excelled in school. Despite his modest family background, he relied on his talent to gain admission to a prestigious university in New York State. While not an Ivy League institution, it was still a decent enough place. With loans and occasional scholarships, Adam paid for the hefty tuition, completed his studies, and landed a job at a Wall Street securities firm. That was perhaps his second highest moment. His parents invited the entire neighborhood to a lavish dinner at a hotel. The emergence of a Wall Street elite from a humble background was a truly remarkable achievement. After entering the workplace, Adam Smith gradually realized that his IQ and EQ were insufficient. While he had managed to keep up with his superior IQ through hard work in college, upon entering the elite concentration camp of Wall Street, he was surrounded by Ivy League graduates, each one a highly skilled and well-connected individual. His modest background offered him no advantage in this world of fame and fortune. Even if he mobilized all his friends and family, the funds he could pool wouldn't even compare to those of his more affluent colleagues. Yet, Adam Smith, through sheer daring and incredible luck, earned his first fortune in his first year. Leveraging the funds pooled from friends and family, he triumphed, multiplying his initial investment by a factor of 10. This unknown newbie plunged headfirst into the financial world, not only surviving but also capitalizing on the newbie benefits to reap continuous profits. Despite occasional setbacks in the following years, his performance and wealth continued to grow steadily. If America is the world of capital, then Wall Street is its heart, where money is everything. Profitable brokers on this street are admired kings, greeted by smiling faces and kindness. At the age of 30, Adam Smith reached the pinnacle of his life. Not only did he make $18 million in just 3 minutes, creating a new legend of wealth, but he also met the love of his life, a voluptuous and intelligent blonde. Determined that this was his life partner, Adam launched a fierce financial offensive against a blonde, and within a month, they were walking hand in hand. Their marriage was blissful, and he soon had a lovely daughter. For a time, Adam Smith felt he was the happiest man in the world. Unfortunately, luck doesn't always accompany one's life. Despite Adam's success in love, his career was in jeopardy. After his marriage, Adam's performance declined, and a series of failed investments tarnished his reputation as a golden broker. Although he managed to survive for 2 more years with his savings, his luck worsened. He lost money on every investment he made. Sometimes, seemingly sure wins would be met with a crash by a large investor, resulting in a complete loss. Eventually, no one wanted to ask Adam for financial management anymore, and he was reduced to wandering the streets, trying to make ends meet by conning a few unfamiliar newbies. With his income plummeting, his marriage began to falter. The sultry wife, initially won over by financial sedition, couldn't stand the disparity. She treated Adam with scorn every day, eventually blatantly infidelity. Today was another fruitless day. After a day of street sales, Adam Smith dragged his exhausted body back to his workstation. He didn't even have time to sit down and rest before his supervisor arrived. "Adam, you should understand the rules. The company has limited space in the securities trading hall. Starting tomorrow, you'll lose this one, but I earned this position back then," Adam Smith growled. "It belongs to me, that was back then. Now you've been at the bottom for 3 consecutive months. If it weren't for your past contributions, the company would have fired you last year," the supervisor sneered, turned, and gestured toward the alley across the street from the floor-to-ceiling windows. The alley was filled with rookie brokers with no connections. Unqualified for the trading floor, they could only peddle stocks on the street. Even if they found clients, they had to ask the traders in the hall to complete the trades. Of course, they had to pay a commission to the traders in the hall. "Now you're just going back to where you belong. I'm sure you've gotten used to it." After the teasing, he delivered a cold ultimatum. "I don't want your stuff at my desk after get off work." When things are going well, kindness abounds. But when life hits its lowest point, those around you become ferocious and terrifying. "Asshole," Adam Smith slammed his fist on his desk, seething with rage. But in the end, it was just impotent rage. Wall Street is cruel. From the moment his performance began to decline and show no sign of recovery, Adam had foreseen this outcome. Tears don't believe here, not even crocodiles shed tears on this street, for there are no philanthropists here. Carrying a large cardboard box and a briefcase, Adam Smith walked home. The setting sun painted the sky a dazzling riot of color. Stooped, head bowed, Adam Smith had no time to admire the sunset. He walked silently back to his home. It was a street-level apartment in Manhattan. It was a small, 3-story building with a small courtyard, purchased when Adam Smith was at the peak of his career. As life worsened, one of Adam's most fortunate decisions was buying the house outright. Having thrived in the stock market, he'd been eager to invest every penny, but his parents constantly urged him to leave a safe place for him and his wife. Furthermore, he was captivated by his beautiful wife and thought he should give her a wedding present, so he finally invested all his money in the house. As he pushed the door open, the wooden ceiling creaked, as if under some kind of force. Adam Smith paused for a moment, then placed a large cardboard box and briefcase on the table, picked up a baseball bat from the corner, and ascended the stairs. The door to the second-floor bedroom was ajar, and from within came the sounds of heavy breathing and the slapping of a wooden bat against the water. Adam Smith pushed open the bedroom door, gripping the bat with both hands, his veins bulging with force. "Can you get off my wife?" a cold voice interrupted the slapping sound. The two busy men turned to look. "Hey, it's Adam." The chubby man gave an awkward, sarcastic smile. "Wait a minute, Mrs. Smith is being too enthusiastic." Downstairs, Mrs. Smith glanced at her husband and sneered, When you get back to the kitchen and cook, then, urging the chubby man, ignore him, let's get on with it. Adam Smith tried to raise his baseball bat, but he finally put it down, turned around and left, closing the door behind him. Because this chubby man was his boss. Even without his job in the securities trading hall, Adam could still scrape by as a street salesman. If this blow continued, he would be completely jobless and facing bankruptcy. His wife would have grounds for divorce, and he would lose half his fortune and be burdened with child support for their illegitimate daughter, leaving him penniless. The silent man walked downstairs to the kitchen, watching the sunset fade into the distant horizon, ushering in darkness. The most despairing thing in the world is that the sun sets every day. The darkness seemed endless. Half an hour later, the chubby man left, a look of satisfaction on his face. Adam Smith, having finished dinner early, carried his briefcase to his study on the third floor. He dropped the briefcase and a black videotape was thrown out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28. What's the point of this piece of meat? Adam Smith stared at the black videotape tossed to the floor with a puzzled expression. He couldn't recall when such an old-fashioned tape had appeared in his briefcase. He picked it up and flipped through it, finding no markings on the surface. Curious, Adam dug a rarely used VCR from the attic. His life had become dull, his days like a life of slavery, devoid of novelty, and even fewer surprises. He connected the TV and inserted the tape, and a smattering of dots appeared on the screen. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt a gaze glance at him from within the screen before the image began to appear. It showed an Asian woman in a red dress, her hair flowing freely from her shoulders, her long black hair cascading to her waist. She looked alluring, yet her every gesture was free and uninhibited, bold and generous, brimming with heroic spirit. She wore a wine gourd slung around her waist, occasionally tipping her head back to drink, letting the wine spill, yet there was no sign of unbridled restraint, only a sense of naturalness flowing freely. If it were just these images, Adam Smith would have been merely surprised and turned off the TV. Raised in American culture, he couldn't comprehend the essence of Eastern culture. But the next scene left him speechless, unable to avert his gaze. The woman in red leaped onto a tree over 10 meters high, her body swirling as she left a trail of crimson shadow across the forest floor. Then, she leaped from the bottom of a cliff, tapping the cliff face twice with her toes before surging onto a cliff taller than the Empire State Building. This was just astonishing speed. The woman in red then shattered a 10-meter-high rock with her slender hands, leaving her hand unscathed. In combat, she drew her slender sword, and with 2 effortless strokes, she shattered the enemy's weapons and even their bodies into shattered fragments. These enemies were no ordinary men, each could sever a horse's body with a single blow of her sword. The strongest could even unleash laser-like sword energy that could easily cleave a building. But even such a formidable foe barely survived a few seconds against the woman in red. The final scene was even more outrageous. The woman in red, lonesome, trod the sea, charging towards the Dutch fleet. Her longsword danced, shattering the barrage of cannonballs from the sky. In a split second, she reached the warships. A one-sided slaughter ensued. The woman in red sword wielded with such swift force that the Dutch soldiers' bodies, their steel blades, the sturdy decks, the stout masts, and even the metal barrels of their guns shattered like foam at the touch of her sword. Finally, having annihilated an entire Dutch fleet, the woman in red stood atop the flagship's mast, removed her wine jug, and drank from it. Beneath her feet, the shattered flagship, strewn with corpses, slowly sank into the sea. At the end of the sea lay the setting sun. The evening glow surged, etched in the sky 8 Chinese characters, the sun rises in the east, and only I am undefeated. This is a scene adapted by Lin Hao, recorded on videotape by Sadako using her supernatural powers. Throughout the film, only Dongfang Bubei, played by Sadako, is a real character, while others are illusions created by supernatural powers. There's no such person as Ling Hu Chong. The crude plot serves only to demonstrate Dongfang Bubei's power. Furthermore, Lin Hao's adaptation of Dongfang Bubei uses a longsword instead of an embroidery needle, naturally intended to promote the Bixi sword manual. Otherwise, Americans unfamiliar with Eastern martial arts culture wouldn't understand why Dongfang Bubei, wielding an embroidery needle, could be more formidable than his sword-wielding foes. To put it bluntly, this is a promotional video for Bixie Sword Manual. How could such a simple and straightforward depiction of the power of swordsmanship convince American men to stab them? After watching this short video, Adam Smith, though struck by the power of the woman in red, wasn't deeply moved. After all, it was just a videotape, perhaps a film produced in a country across the ocean. However, at the end of the scene, after finishing her drink, the woman in red turns and stares intently at Adam Smith, watching from the television. The next moment, a scene nearly frightened Adam Smith to death unfolded. The woman in red leaped up, flew toward the camera, and then pierced through the television screen, appearing before Adam Smith. Stunned, Adam Smith's eyes rolled back and he fainted. That's poor mental fortitude. Lin Hao, who was currently using Sadako's spirit, shook his head. The Little Devil's contract allowed Lin Hao to freely control every soul that signed the contract, allowing him to alter memories, borrow perspectives, and even remotely control them with his own consciousness. All souls that signed a contract with the devil had sold their souls to the devil. At this moment, Lin Hao hadn't completely possessed Sadako's spirit, only half. I'll demonstrate this once, and you'll follow suit. First, he used Sadako's supernatural powers to drag the target's consciousness into an illusion and show them the sword manual of exorcism. Adam Smith regained consciousness to find himself in a space shrouded in black and white snowflakes. Sadako, dressed in red, stood out in the black and white world. You're the guy from the movie. Adam Smith recognized him, horrified. Where is this place? Do you want power? Lin Hao, using Sadako's spirit, spoke in a voice neither male nor female. Power. As a child, Adam Smith had read fantasy comics and watched movies, often featuring similar plots, and he quickly realized that he, like the protagonists, had experienced such extraordinary things. Of course I want power. Life had become so rotten that Adam Smith desperately wanted to change, even if it meant selling his soul to the devil. Very well, I can grant you the same power as me. Lin Hao demonstrated Sadako's lines for the future. Really? Adam Smith, having just seen the movie, was astonished. Dongfang Bubei's power in the movie was inhuman. Even though today's technology is far more advanced than it was during the days of the Dutch Armada, possessing his power would still make him a superhuman. He would be even more powerful than the historical Captain America. At least Captain America couldn't leap onto the Empire State Building in a few steps or wield a sword like a laser beam, slicing through a building. Yes, but this power comes at a price. Lin Hao manipulated Sadako into a smile. It doesn't matter, I'll give anything. Adam Smith was eager. He already had nothing. My power comes from a magical Eastern martial arts manual called the Book of Swordsmanship. To practice this, one must first castrate oneself. Lin Hao smiled. Actually, I used to be a man. But to master this sword technique, I cut off the lower part. Adam Smith was stunned. To cut or not to cut, that was the question. His wife had been openly having affairs with other men and had long since banned him. His income was meager, barely enough to afford a night out at the bar. What good was this piece of flesh? Cut. I'll cut. Adam Smith gritted his teeth and let out a shrill roar. Without power, I'll soon be left with nothing. I need power, then take it. Lin Hao used Sadako's supernatural powers to imprint the moves and key paths from the Book of Swordsmanship into Adam Smith's memory. In the outside world, he raised a sharp blade towards Adam Smith, who lay on the floor with his eyes closed. Wait, do you want to give up the eggs, or the sausage too? Lin Hao was in a dilemma. After all, he had no experience. Forget it, just to be safe, cut it off together. With a flick of the knife, he cut off the root of Adam Smith's troubles. When he was done, the other half of the spirit controlled by Sadako reached out and used her healing ability to heal Adam's wound. Yes, my Sadako is a doctor. Lin Hao was quite surprised. There was a version of Sadako that split off into one side and mastered the superpower of healing. He didn't expect this version of Sadako to have the same. After the wound healed, Lin Hao stepped forward to complete the final step. Remember, this world doesn't have internal energy. Therefore, every new practitioner must have the seed of internal energy planted in them by someone who already possesses it. They can't find the sense of ki through meditation. From now on, you will have to personally transfer the internal energy I store within you into the target's body. As for how they transfer it, I won't worry about it. Lin Hao was eager for the sword manual of exorcism to spread rapidly among American men, ideally, for all of them to give him a sword. After all, they couldn't obtain other internal energy techniques, and even if they possessed a small amount of internal energy, it would quickly dissipate without replenishment. With Adam Smith, his first test subject, Lin Hao was extremely dedicated, fearing he wouldn't understand the art of ki circulation. After implanting the internal energy seed into his body, he personally opened up the meridians necessary for practicing the sword manual of exorcism, completing a full cycle before stopping. By the time he was done, a ray of white light had appeared on the horizon. Have you learned it? Lin Hao instructed Sadako. From now on, do this and strive to make the Bixi sword manual a national phenomenon. With that, Lin Hao regained consciousness. Sadako, dressed in red, tilted her head, thought for a moment, then returned to the TV. A moment later, the black tape in the VCR vanished from thin air, reappearing randomly in a shabby Atlanta apartment. An hour later, as the morning light grew, Adam Smith opened his eyes. He could clearly feel a mysterious energy surge through his body, and a flood of memories flooded his mind. This confirmed that everything that had just happened was no dream. A chill ran through his lower body, and a bloody heap of flesh lay beside him. He was silent for a moment, staring at the flesh falling from his body, mourning his lost youth. He quickly gathered his composure, sat cross-legged, and began to channel the energy within him according to the techniques he had memorized. After completing a cycle, Adam felt a little stronger. He immediately grabbed a short iron rod from his study and began practicing sword techniques according to the memorized moves. After adding internal strength, the short iron rod in his hand moved so fast that it pierced the air, and the iron rod flew around, creating a gust of wind in the study. It's not very convenient. It seems I have to find a long sword. After practicing the sword technique, Adam Smith's spirit and energy changed dramatically. His eyes were sharp and sinister, and his behavior became more feminine. "Asshole, what time is it?" A shrill-like roar came from downstairs. "Why don't you go to work? Do you want to lose your job and go bankrupt?" Adam Smith immediately showed a cruel smile. He turned his head to look at the piece of meat on the floor and muttered to himself, "Didn't you love it very much before? Then let it merge with you forever." I weekly ask for a few monthly tickets, recommendation tickets, and some collections and follow-up readings. Chapter 29, Learned the Sword of Exorcism, 1 Infected 2. Adam Smith bent down to pick up his treasure, weighing it in his hands. It was surprisingly light. Like an octopus's leg, it shrinks and curls up after being separated from its body. If it continued to lose water, it would quickly dry out, becoming a solid mass of organic matter. While it was still wet, Adam Smith instinctively squeezed it again, his expression filled with emotion, as if reminiscing about his past as a man. After a moment, he regained his resolve. He had nothing, yet now he had been given the opportunity to become a transcendent human. What could he not want? Halfway through his life, he had experienced both highs and lows as a man. Now, he would embrace a new identity and experience a different landscape. Before starting anew, he wanted to make a clean break with the past. Grabbing his treasure, he descended the stairs and was met by his wife, whose face was furious. Her once beautiful face, though marked by the marks of time, still held its allure. But now, it only filled Adam with boredom and hatred. "Fuck you. You're not going to work after 9? You're really going to die?" The man's fist struck the blonde's abdomen, the force tensing her muscles. The headlights rippled, her eyes bulged, her mouth gaped, and blood gushed out. With his other hand, he thrust his treasure into the blonde's mouth, pushing it deep into her throat. Adam clamped her jaws shut, forcing the treasure down her esophagus. "You," the blonde clutched her throat, feeling unable to breathe, and tremblingly said, "What are you feeding me?" The treasure blocked her throat, obstructing her trachea. In a moment, the blonde's face turned a crimson purple. "With your style, you're only blocking one hole. You won't be satisfied." Adam Smith glanced around, then walked over to the baseball bat in the corner and brought it over. He kicked his wife to the ground, grabbed one of her legs with one hand, raised the baseball bat, and channeled his inner energy into a piercing sword move. Puff! The thick end of the baseball bat thrust toward the hole. The fierce, evil-repelling sword technique, unleashed for the first time in this world, struck first the abdomen, then the chest, and finally the throat, where it successfully joined the large treasure. The entire length of the baseball bat pierced the blonde's body. Within seconds, she was dead, her body still twitching reflexively like a fish with its head chopped off. "For the sake of your service, I'll give you a quick death." Adam Smith looked at the blonde on the floor with a cold expression. "I'll send each of the men you've touched down with you, and I promise you, they won't die a quick death." After scavenging his family's cash and bank cards, Adam Smith set fire to the apartment that had once etched his happy memories. The flames shot up into the sky, and Adam, dressed in casual clothes, vanished into the neighborhood, following the flow of people. He first went to Chinatown, at the southern tip of Manhattan, and found a tailor's shop, where he presented his hand-drawn designs to the owner. "I need a dress like this, made of red fabric." This image remains most vivid in Adam's memory. Dongfang Bubei's red dress became the most striking symbol in the black and white world, like a fire that ignited his new life. The tailor, an elderly Chinese man, looked up at Adam. Adam's tailoring skills were still rudimentary. Not only was his Adam's apple still there, but even his stubble from a night of unshaved hair was still noticeable. "This is a woman's dress, no problem, I'll pay double the price. Please start now." Adam handed over $200 bills. Considering the money, the old tailor didn't ask any more questions, thinking perhaps the man was buying it for his wife or lover. But once he was done, Adam Smith actually changed into the red dress right in front of him. As he left, Adam, imitating a movie gesture, cupped his fists to the old tailor and said, "Thank you." Adam Smith, dressed in red, drew a lot of attention as he walked through Chinatown. But this was free America, where strange attire was common and a riot of fancy was not uncommon. He searched the streets for a long time, but couldn't find any cold weapons. Finally, passing a martial arts school, he spotted a sword on a weapons rack through the glass window. "Boss, I'd like to buy a sword from you." The instructor stared at the strange man in woman's clothing, stunned. It took him a while to realize, "You want a sword?" "Yes," Adam nodded. "Have you studied Chinese swordsmanship?" The owner, quick thinking, offered a sales pitch with a smile. "If you're interested, come learn at our school. I'll pay the tuition, and please sell me a good sword." The former Wall Street elite naturally understood the owner's intentions. Seeing the man willing to pay a premium for the sword, and not have to spend time teaching him, the owner had no reason to refuse. He walked to the weapons rack and selected a slender iron sword in the shape of a Han Dynasty sword. He approached Adam Smith, not forgetting to boast, "Sir, you may not understand this, but the Han Dynasty sword, descended from the Zhou Dynasty, holds an irreplaceable place in the history of Chinese swords." Adam Smith couldn't take his eyes off the sword, for it resembled the one worn by Dongfang Bubei. This was naturally Lin Hao's personal aesthetic. Adam Smith took 2 steps forward, grasped the hilt, and yanked it straight out. With a flick of his hand, he whipped the sword into a series of floral patterns. Feeling inspired, he then demonstrated a few more evil-repelling sword techniques within the martial arts hall. The moves were astonishingly fast, with elusive shadows, flashes of cold light, and sharp streaks piercing the air, creating a whistling sound. "Excellent sword." Adam Smith sheathed it, tossed out the banknotes, and took the sword from the owner's hand. The stunned owner remained stunned. What had he just witnessed? A prominent-nosed foreigner displaying breathtakingly exquisite swordsmanship right before his eyes. What are Chinese martial arts like in Marvel Comics? Some fake techniques, incorporating Tai Chi and Xingyi movements, deliberately reduced Chinese martial arts to mere flowery fists and embroidered legs. They barely scratched the surface of Tai Chi and Xingyi, and refused to depict the powerful techniques of Baji and Bagua. The moves in Iron Fist and Shang-Chi are more like karate and judo than Chinese martial arts. Foreigners, unaware of the Chinese origins of Japanese martial arts, naturally harbor disdain for Chinese martial arts. Their aspirations are truly despicable. The sudden appearance of a pure and powerful Chinese sword technique leaves the owner of a martial arts gym wondering who is truly Chinese. Responding, the owner quickly chases out the door, shouting to the already disappearing man in red, "Master, I want to learn martial arts from you." Adam Smith ignores him. After obtaining a real sword, he embarks on a journey of revenge. Soon, Adam Smith appears on Wall Street, swaggering into his securities firm and opening the door to his boss's office to the astonishment of his colleagues. Without a word, he drew his sword and struck a man. First, slices of fat were slashed away by the whirling blade. Only after the flesh and bone separated did a massive head finally escape from the portly body. Blood gushed out, and pieces of flesh flew across the White Office. A blood-soaked skeleton lay on the chair behind the desk. After the murder, Adam Smith left his boss's office and approached the supervisor who had spoken harshly to him the day before. The sword flashed sharply, and another stream of blood flowed. This man hadn't touched his wife, but he was foul-mouthed. Seeing Adam Smith kill 2 people in the blink of an eye, His colleagues in the office cried out in horror. Murder? Who else? Adam Smith tilted his head, thinking for a moment, then realized, oh, Potter, Billy, and Thor. He took 2 steps forward, smiled, and asked a male colleague, whose legs were shaking, Ron, where is Mr. Potter? In the securities hall. Thank you. After politely thanking him, Adam Smith went to the securities hall and found Mr. Potter selling stocks to a client. He drew his sword and performed the sword moves as if he were practicing. Once again, flesh and bones were separated, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. After performing several sword moves, Adam Smith discovered the magic. The sword skills he learned would actually drive the growth of energy in his body as he continued to perform them. In other words, every battle he fought, as long as he survived, would be stronger than the last. The Manhattan Police Department has received news of the successive killings, and police cars are roaring over. At the same time, the surveillance footage was transmitted back to the God, Snake, Shield Agency, attracting attention from many parties. Lin Hao ate melons and watched the show, enjoying the growing resentment of living beings in the background. Learned the sword to ward off evil spirits, 1 infected 2, and American men rolled up thanks to dust in the sea of people for the 500-point reward. Chapter 30, Not Enough New York Reporters. In the spring of 2008 in this universe, several major events unfolded in America. First, the shooting of a black pilot by a San Francisco police officer sparked another wave of racial injustice across the country. Then, before this wave of turmoil had subsided, 2 more major events suddenly broke out in New York. The day after Tony Stark departed for Afghanistan, insider information broke on Wall Street before the market opened. Tony Stark, the head of Stark Industries, a brilliant weapons designer, and a playboy, had been kidnapped by militants. Capital suddenly surged. Golden brokers with access to this information frantically contacted investors, especially those holding Stark Industries stock, urging them to sell as soon as the market opened. In times like these, the quickest to flee lost less. Upon hearing the news, Albert Ellis was stunned for a moment, then filled with regret. Why had he stopped himself? He didn't follow suit this time. He immediately called the God of Wealth to share the good news. Mr. Lin, you're going to make a killing, $5 million with tenfold leverage. This deal is going to be a lucrative one. Judging by the current news, Tony Stark is in grave danger, and Stark Industries' stock price is likely to plummet. The more it falls, the more Lin Hao will profit. The greater their faith in Tony Stark's talent, the more panic they're now experiencing. Tony Stark has been kidnapped by militants, Albert Ellis excitedly announced the good news to Lin Hao. But the God of Wealth's reaction was unimpressive, as if he'd expected it. Oh, did Mr. Lin know Tony Stark was going to be in trouble? Yes, Stark Industries' stock price had been steadily rising for the past 6 months, yet this gentleman suddenly went on a massive short-selling spree. Could he be connected to the kidnapping? Albert Ellis's thoughts wandered, and the more he thought, the more he thought. But Lin Hao's next words interrupted his thoughts. By the way, you don't have a habit of flirting with married women, do you? Adam Smith was on his way, sword in hand. If Albert had also waded through Mrs. Smith's sewer, Lin Hao would most likely lose this gunman. After all, he'd spent 5 years training a skilled tool. It would be a shame to lose him for no reason. This light-hearted remark immediately confused Albert Ellis, who was still lost in his wild thoughts. What the hell? I'm here talking about stocks, and you're asking me if I've slept with someone else's wife? If you were to ask me about that, I'd be thrilled. He had originally wanted to discuss the pleasures of the Minotaur with the God of Wealth, but then he suddenly remembered that the God of Wealth was from the East, and the culture there didn't seem to support such pleasantries, so he quickly changed his tone. No, absolutely not, Albert Ellis said sternly. Mr. Lin, you have to trust my integrity. Even if I were paid to be his escort, I would never touch another person's wife. He had to impress the God of Wealth, or he'd never have a chance to establish a relationship. Who would want to be friends with a Minotaur? Unless he first marries a beautiful wife. Alright, Lin Hao hung up the phone. If Albert Ellis were truly going to be ripped off, he'd have no choice but to hire a new hire. He had plenty of aliases and a lot of hires anyway. After Wall Street officially opened, Stark Industries immediately saw a surge in sell orders. Initially, uninformed retail investors eagerly took up the slack. But as the sell orders piled up, veteran investors quickly realized something was amiss. Sure enough, news of Tony Stark's kidnapping quickly spread from the top financiers down the chain. Those financiers, intent on keeping the news under wraps, discovered that only a small portion of their sell orders were being filled, and the news inevitably spread. The stock market is always the most informed source of news. Upon discovering the unusual situation at Stark Industries, a large number of reporters rushed to Stark Tower to confirm the situation. Just as they thought this was the biggest news story of the day, Adam Smith, clad in red and with a sword at his waist, swaggered onto Wall Street. He first murdered people at a securities firm in an office building, then proceeded to slaughter them publicly on the stock exchange floor, his methods utterly brutal. Even the master chef at the roast duck restaurant wasn't sure he could shave the meat so cleanly. Next up, Billy, Adam Smith, having slashed off Mr. Potter's head with his sword, glanced around, searching for his next target. Thanks to Tony Stark's unexpected kidnapping, Wall Street was incredibly busy this morning, leaving many traders completely occupied on the trading floor. Adam quickly found his next target. With a flash of his red-clad form, he swooped down upon Mr. Billy in the blink of an eye. While not as ghostly as Dongfang Bubei, he was equally terrifying to the average person. He drew his sword, a surge of light tearing flesh apart, blood splattering. Murder, call the police, hurry. The stockholders and traders, previously engrossed in the information display, finally reacted as Adam Smith dispatched the second victim. Great, there's Thor too. Honestly, Adam Smith wasn't even sure how many men his wife had been with in recent years. The few he'd killed today were all those who had taken advantage of him and deliberately flaunted themselves in front of him. This time, officers from the Manhattan Police Department unexpectedly arrived at the scene at the same time as the reporters. Firstly, the NYPD is the most powerful police department in the United States, with the best equipment, the most abundant funding, and the fastest response time. They maintain order in an area home to some of the wealthiest individuals in the United States, and indeed the world. The Manhattan Police Department, in particular, is the crown jewel of the crown jewels. Wall Street, the heart of capital, is the heart of the Manhattan Police Department. Even the slightest disturbance is a must, or the commissioner's seat will be immediately replaced. Secondly, with the news of Tony Stark's kidnapping breaking out today, a large number of New York reporters have gathered near Stark Tower. There aren't enough reporters in New York today. Back off, back off. The Manhattan Police Commissioner personally led a team to the scene. Upon arrival, they set up a cordon and drove away the fearless onlookers. Asshole, how dare you cause trouble here? The commissioner's face was grim. Wall Street had seen plenty of deaths before, but they were all self-inflicted. Now, someone had the audacity to kill people here, and kill several, showing no regard for the New York police. Hold your horses. We must apprehend these criminals. Manhattan police surrounded the stock exchange, on high alert. Each officer wielded a barrage of submachine guns, donned body armor, and wore helmets. The front row even had top-quality blast shields. The heavily armored police cars even had machine guns, firing bullets over 10 millimeters in diameter. Yes, these were guns, definitely not cannons. A man in red bolted out of the stock exchange like lightning. After dispatching several confirmed victims, Adam Smith knew he had to flee. His current strength wasn't at the level of the film's invincible Dongfang, who couldn't slash fleets with his sword. Fire, the Manhattan police chief didn't even think of shouting. Countless bullets rained down. Adam Smith's pupils shrank, but instead of retreating, he charged forward. Perhaps it was the ferocity of his recent killing, or perhaps it was the influence of the film's invincible Dongfang, who would attack every enemy he encountered. Swords flashed, slicing down bullets. However, the bullets were too numerous, and Adam Smith's power was limited. He could only barely protect his chest and face, leaving him with multiple wounds. His red shirt was stained with blood. In less than 2 seconds, Adam Smith swung his sword, cleaving through the riot shield and charging into the ranks of police officers. The offensive and defensive forces shifted. The officers couldn't shoot their fellow officers, and the machine gunners in the armored police vehicles dared not pull the trigger into the crowd. Death at the hands of criminals was one thing, but death at the hands of one's own people would not be a commemoration. Countless public welfare organizations would mobilize the families to protest. The best outcome for the officer who fired the shot would be a temporary position, but he would likely be fired or even pursued for compensation. While the officers were restrained, Adam Smith went on a killing spree. The blade, imbued with his inner energy, sliced through the bodies of the surrounding officers, sending blood splattering and body parts flying everywhere. Fortunately, He still had some sense. After clearing a certain distance, he used his footwork to escape the encirclement, stepping on the roof of a police car and fleeing into the distance. The officers were lying dead and wounded on the spot. "Boss, the criminals escaped. Should we chase him?" "Why are you asking me?" "Ask the chief." "Chief? Chief, where's the chief?" "Oh no. The chief's neck has been severed. Please read and save this." "Don't worry, the exorcism sword technique plot is just a layout, and I won't keep writing about it, as it will cause visual fatigue. Regarding the issue of dissemination, there will be new plot points later. Right now, the main Marvel storyline hasn't started. The world is safe, and ordinary people don't have the urge to become powerful. Right now, I'm just using this tool to advertise. Once Director Lin turns America into disaster, more people will be willing to take a stab at it. Chapter 31, SHIE Agents in Hell's Kitchen. On the west shore of Manhattan, a rectangular area bounded by 59th and 34th Streets to the north and south, 8th Avenue to the east, and the Hudson River to the west, lies the legendary Hell's Kitchen. Once a notorious slum on Manhattan Island, Hell's Kitchen was primarily inhabited by working-class Irish immigrants, renowned for its disorganized, poor living conditions, intense ethnic conflict, and high crime rates. While American comics have given rise to the stories of Spider-Man, Daredevil, the Kingpin, and Bullseye, Chinese fiction has used it to create numerous otherworldly figures. Entering the area, Lin Hao felt no gaze from the tycoons, but instead saw their greedy gazes. In almost every alley, a group of blacks, whites, and drug addicts would target the lone Asian face, unabashedly aiming for $0 purchases. Lin Hao has now adopted a new identity, Kurosaki Ichigo. He's a legitimate businessman in Tokyo. In the real world, Hell's Kitchen, driven by skyrocketing Manhattan housing prices, saw real estate developers enter the area and aggressively develop the real estate industry. By raising rents and the cost of living, they effectively displaced low-income residents. This effectively resolved the security challenges that had plagued the New York City government and police department for years. The Lord's kindness meant he couldn't stand the poor, so the area disappeared. Continuous gentrification led to a growing number of gentlemen in the area, improving public safety. However, in the Marvel universe, the editors needed a frequently turbulent area of New York City to provide a stage for superheroes to perform. Consequently, no real estate developer dared to enter Hell's Kitchen in this world until over a decade later. At this point, the blind lawyer would likely still be in school, Spider-Man would be an 8-year-old, and Kingpin would already have control over the local mafia. None of this had anything to do with Lin Hao's current situation. He was there to find someone. A person named Lan Nian, listed in the SWAR files, was a level 7 agent, formerly an operative of the Americas branch. His life card within the Ring Fortress indicated he was still alive, and the safe house he had filed for was located in Hell's Kitchen. Lin Hao's trip to New York was merely a pretext for attending Tony Stark's party, a logical excuse for his arrival. However, he happened to coincide with Tony's trip to Afghanistan, which led him to Wall Street, where he encountered the Adam Smith incident. His main purpose was to search for surviving agents from the former Americas branch. Currently, only 63 agents remain from the Americas branch, scattered across the continent. 11 are in South America, representing relatively minor losses, while the remaining 52 are spread across North America, with a majority in the United States. Due to the importance of the Americas branch, the head of the branch is a level 8 agent within the SWAR system. He oversees 4 level 7 agents, 2 in the United States and 1 in Greater Canada and 1 in West Africa. Now that the head, Cheng Yi, has passed away, along with another level 7 agent in the United States, Lan Kinian, the highest-ranking level 7, remains. If he wants to know the details of the incident that occurred a few months ago, he's the most direct person to ask. The Americas branch had suffered heavy losses, and the surviving agents had all fallen silent, as per protocol. Aside from Director Zheng Xian and the new head, no one knew their exact location. The safe house Lan Kinian had registered was located in the heart of Hell's Kitchen. Lin Hao, sporting an Asian face, walked nearly halfway down the street, trailed by a number of people attempting to buy for free. Upon reaching Lan Kinian's apartment, the group suddenly stopped, staring at him with surprise before disguising their sardonic and cruel smiles. Some even made throat-slitting gestures, undisguised malice. Lin Hao entered the apartment complex, only to find it surprisingly had a white manager, bald and heavily tattooed. "Hey, kid," the burly dorm manager sneered, "this isn't the place for you." Despite the harsh words, strangely, he showed no sarcasm or malice towards Lin Hao's appearance or skin color. Lin Hao looked at the burly dorm manager and spoke calmly, "Tell Lan Kenian that someone from back home is looking for him." "You looking for Mr. Lan?" The dorm manager stood up, looked Lin Hao up and down, and finally cracked a cruel smile. "Boy, I don't care where you heard Mr. Lan's real name, but if Mr. Lan doesn't see you after I call, I guarantee you'll die a miserable death." Lin Hao turned his gaze away and ignored him. The dorm manager, fearing not to report, picked up the phone. A moment later, he emerged from the duty room, forcing a fawning smile. He bent down to lead Lin Hao to the elevator and pressed the button first. "Sir, please, Mr. Lan is waiting on the 7th floor." Lin Hao stepped into the elevator and arrived a moment later. The entire floor was occupied by Lan Kenian's office. As a level 7 agent of the SHIE, it was natural for him to have built a career in New York. This was also his disguise. As the elevator doors opened, Lin Hao saw a man in green casual clothes sitting behind a desk. He had muscular build and looked to be in his early 30s, with short hair and a wisp of mustache. "Where are you from?" Lan Kenian examined Lin Hao carefully, having no memory of him. "From my hometown," Lin Hao said, switching to Chinese. "Where is your hometown?" Lan Kenian continued, also in Chinese. "A place of peace of mind," Lin Hao replied calmly. Lan Kenian's pupils constricted slightly, but he remained calm and continued, "It's raining so hard outside, why didn't you bring an umbrella?" The sky outside was now clear, not a single cloud in sight. Lin Hao then said his final sentence, "Orchids have 8 leaves." After all the codes matched, Lan Kenian finally stood up excitedly, quickly ran to the wall, opened a built-in iron box, and pressed a red button inside. "I've activated the jammer," Lan Kenian said, his face filled with excitement as he stepped forward and held out his hands to Lin Hao, his hands even trembling slightly. "Comrade, you're finally here." Lin Hao extended a hand toward him, continuing to observe his subtle expressions. Since downstairs, Lin Hao had been using his observation haki to gauge the number of people in the apartment and the threats involved. Upon entering the 7th floor, he had focused his attention on Lan Kenian. If he showed any unusual behavior, he would swiftly kill him. So far, Lin Hao hadn't noticed anything unusual about him. His subtle expressions were fine, and his observation haki hadn't detected any threat. He hadn't even foreseen a fragment of the future where he would attack. While Whitebeard's observation haki wasn't shown to have the ability to foresee the future in the original manga, it's likely that Oda hadn't finalized the setting early on. Regardless, the observation haki Lin Hao had copied allowed him to foresee a short period of time. This was the reason Lin Hao had the courage to come alone and in his real body. "What exactly happened a few months ago?" Lin Hao said bluntly. "I don't understand." Speaking of this, Lan Kenian's expression became a complex mix of anger, sadness, and a hint of fear. At the end of last year, on Christmas Eve, Minister Cheng suddenly issued an emergency order to everyone, requiring us to enter silent mode. Then our comrades were hunted by SHIELD, and only one person in the team I personally led survived, and the other 2 teams I was responsible for contacting lost contact. In this situation, I had no choice but to return here according to the plan and cut off all contact with other teams. "When was the last time you saw Minister Chen before the accident?" Lin Hao asked. "September 10th of last year," Lan Kenian answered immediately. "Okay, I'll come see you again later." Lin Hao turned and left. "You?" Lan Kenian hesitated, his eyes full of expectation. "When will you reorganize?" As he said this, he realized that he shouldn't ask too much, and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, I'm just a little anxious." Lin Hao turned around and looked at him deeply, still finding no flaws. "Don't worry, I won't keep you waiting too long." As the person walked to the elevator door, a faint voice came, "There's a traitor in our team." Entering the elevator, Lin Hao turned around and saw the shock on Lan Kenian's face and the anger that naturally emerged a moment later. The elevator door closed, blocking the view, but the anger on Lan Kenian's face remained. The elevator went down. Lan Kenian walked to the window, quietly watching Lin Hao go away on the street. Until this moment, he suddenly stroked his chest, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly. The new guy is quite interesting. Chapter 32: Stark's Redemption and the Petty Demon King. Tony Stark's disappearance only sent Wall Street into panic for a morning, and the Red Man murder case also only caused a brief period of turmoil. Inside the stock exchange, Forensic scientists collected remains, forensic officers took photographs and collected evidence, detectives questioned individuals, and cleaners cleaned up the bloody remains. Traders, however, continued to answer client calls, discussing the day's stock market. Veteran investors gathered around, alternately glancing at the busy police and the scattered remains and blood on the ground, then staring intently at the bulletin board on the wall. The two groups occasionally engaged in negotiations, but each side remained detached. Even in the event of a world war or an alien invasion, the New York Stock Exchange would not cease operations. Perhaps this heart of capital would only cease to function if it were completely drained of its vitality. Under pressure from the China Securities Regulatory Commission, Stark Industries was forced to disclose Tony Stark's kidnapping. Investors rushed to sell their shares, cursing the playboy who had fled to a dangerous place to seek death, causing them to suffer heavy losses. Aside from Pepper Potts, Happy the producer, and his good friend Rhoda, no one in the vast city of New York truly cared about Tony Stark's life or death. Instead, a doctor, whose family had been destroyed by a weapon manufactured by Stark Industries, came to his aid, not only saving his life but even sacrificing himself to ensure his evacuation. In the mountains of Connaught Province, Afghanistan, a deep cave sat dimly lit. A heavily bandaged man lay on a metal bed, a long catheter inserted into his nostrils. A magnet embedded in his chest was connected to two wires, each connected to a battery from a car. Beside the bed, a bald man wearing glasses was shaving in the mirror. In the dim light, he shaved meticulously, his hands steady, as if performing surgery. Suddenly, the man on the metal bed opened his eyes and awoke. He looked around blankly, taking in the dim ceiling light and the grimy cave. He pulled a cannula out of his nose, causing him to cough twice, probably due to the pain in his chest. He quickly looked down and saw the bandage and the foreign object beneath it. Terrified, he frantically tore it off, finally revealing the magnet embedded in his chest. Following the magnet, he found the car battery connected to the wires. Waking up to find a magnet suddenly inserted into his chest would have devastated anyone. The man gasped sharply, letting out a breathless roar. "Are you awake?" Ethan, who was shaving, glanced at him in the mirror. "What did you do to me?" Tony Stark's expression was filled with fear and anger. "What?" Ethan smiled, as if it were a trivial act. "I saved your life. Despite my best efforts, many fragments remain in your body, and they're working their way through your blood vessels into your heart." Ethan put down his razor, picked up a small glass bottle from the table, shook it, and tossed it to Tony Stark on the metal bed. Tony Stark took the small glass bottle and, holding it up to the light, saw the tiny fragments within. "I've seen many such injuries in the village. People call them the living dead. After about a week, the shrapnel will penetrate their organs, and no one can save them. They suffer agonizing pain before they die, like 1,000 poisonous insects tearing at their bodies. They want to live, but can only watch helplessly as they die." Ethan seemed to recall the past, his expression cold. "How does it feel to be wounded by a weapon you made?" Tony Stark was speechless, but at this moment, he hadn't yet begun to reflect. He still held the position of a weapons manufacturer. He touched the wires, followed them to the car battery, and began to think. Ethan took out a frying pan and set it on the fire to cook porridge. Seeing that the other party ignored him, he brought up another incident. "Actually, we met once, at a technical seminar in Bern." Tony Stark glanced at him again and shook his head. "I don't remember. Of course, if I were that drunk, I wouldn't even be able to stand steadily, let alone give a lecture on integrated circuits." Ethan stirred the porridge in the pan. Tony looked up and saw the security camera on the wall. He asked, "Where's this?" Ethan was about to answer when footsteps sounded outside the iron gate. "Hurry, get up." He put down the frying pan and urged Tony, "Follow me later." "Remember." A group of fierce-looking armed men rushed in. Ethan put his hands on his head, and Tony followed suit. Tony Stark, the bearded leader, raised his hands and declared pompously, "Welcome to America's most famous mass murderer." He then spouted off a stream of incomprehensible language, with Ethan translating. "He wants you to help him build a missile, the same Jellicoe missile you showed me." Ethan took a black and white photo and showed it to Tony. Stubborn, Tony refused outright. He was then treated to lavish spot treatment, complete with water and occasional bursts of electric sparks from the wires in his chest. It was a stark contrast to the water and fire, but it was a shame the attendant wasn't the charming technician 88. After the business reception, the client, blindfolding Tony, led him out of the cave to demonstrate his prowess to the workers. "See, The bearded man circled in front of Tony, pointing to the piles of weapons and ammunition outside the cave. "Here are all the materials you need." Tony Stark was stunned. All he saw were weapons produced by Stark Industries, a company that had clearly only supplied these weapons to the American military. Although Tony was an arms dealer, he was unfortunately less mature than the great demon Lin Hao. He simply believed his weapons were supplied solely to the U.S. military, maintaining peace in the free world, but he failed to grasp the principle that an arms dealer who doesn't sell to both sides of the war is not a good arms dealer. How could a free America be without arms dealers who sold weapons to the enemy? "Get started now. Finish the job, and I'll let you go," the client's father promised. Tony Stark had matured this time. He was confident in his own talent. The terrorists, if they had him, would only force him to manufacture weapons and would never let this laying rooster go. So he had to fend for himself. Fortunately, he had a good idea in mind before the incident and had even put it into practice. For a genius like him, having and not having are two different concepts, not to mention having a practical experience. Tony quickly completed the sketch, and the prototype was more streamlined and more rational than the original. While Tony Stark struggled to save himself, Lin Hao had been contacting the remaining surviving agents around New York State, each time adopting a different identity, each a real-life cover. Honestly, in his 10 years with SHIE, Lin Hao had exploited the agency's resources to carry out numerous acts behind Zheng Xian's back. For example, Zheng Xian was unaware of Lin Hao's android technology. He assumed at most that Lin Hao was recruiting his own underlings. This was standard procedure for a senior agent. If a traitor emerged among these contacts, their cover would be exposed, allowing Lin Hao to identify the traitor. It was a game of fishing, using the cover as bait. This crude tactic was the only option when no further leads were available. While ordinary agents would suffer losses, Lin Hao didn't mind. After contacting the last surviving agent near New York State, Lin Hao received a video call from a phone bug, revealing a weathered man with a bitter expression. "Director, I've searched Western Hunan, Southern Hunan, Eastern Sichuan, and Northern Guizhou several times, but I haven't found the legend of Taro Village. Jia Ying's village was destroyed 18 years ago when a mudslide occurred, so it didn't attract the attention of the Bureau. Also, I went to the plateau to look for it, but I didn't find any villages inhabited by the Inhumans. They may be in another dimension of time and space. As for Kamartaj, the director should have a few nails in his hands that I can't touch." "Oh," Lin Hao responded calmly. Seeing that the big devil was about to hang up, the man nicknamed Saber pleaded, "Director, I want to go out on a field mission. I wasn't even part of the last attack on Wakanda." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Lin Hao scolded with a stern face. "That's resource development, peaceful coexistence." Saber was speechless and forced a flattering smile that he was not good at. "Director, civilian personnel can do such investigations. I'm a special operations team member, a level 7 agent." "Oh," Lin Hao threw him a light-hearted remark. "Who can you beat? You can't even take down a pacifist, and you have the nerve to go out on a field mission." Saber was speechless. There are 150,000 people in the Bureau. How many of them can single-handedly fight a pacifist? He regretted it. He shouldn't have been so servile back then and took the initiative to instruct Director Lin in martial arts training. In the end, he was slapped and sent flying, and he was held in grudge for so many years. The big devil was really petty. Chapter 33. I came here for 3 things. After hanging up the phone with Saber, Lin Hao fell into deep thought. Ever since joining the SHIE Bureau and gaining a certain amount of power 10 years ago, Lin Hao had developed an interest in Su Wenwu and Jia Ying. The Marvel Cinematic Universe clearly states that Su Wenwu has lived for over 1,000 years, and Jia Ying possesses powerful self-healing abilities, having survived having her organs ripped out, her blood drained, and torn apart by 5 horses. Director Lin isn't pretentious, he wants it. Ever since discovering he was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe 15 years ago, Lin Hao's every effort has been solely to defeat Director Mie and survive. This is his ultimate goal at this stage. The little devil offered him a chance to change his fate, but randomness is too unreliable. Lin Hao can only try his best to collect the grudges of living beings, hoping to one day obtain treasures like the 9 transformation golden pill and the Jade Disc of creation. Failing that, a demon passport or Red Wolf's frying pan might also work, or even a 4th-dimensional pocket to hide in for safety. At the very least, obtaining a portal to get to planet Morag first and retrieve the Power Stone, then hiding it in the alternate dimension opened by Little Devil, preventing Director Mie from gathering all 6, was another possible solution. Therefore, once Lin Hao had gained a certain level of power and control over a certain amount of resources, he was eager to come to America. This was partly to stir up trouble and reap the grudges of the living, and partly to try to locate the Space Stone in SHIELD's collection. Although the Space Stone was being watched by Odin, Lin Hao could easily wait until he died of old age before attempting to seize it. Having personally wielded the Holy Spear, Lin Hao felt more confident, and now perhaps he didn't need to wait. Surviving Director Mie's attack was Lin Hao's first goal, and naturally, immortality was his second. With vast resources at his disposal, Lin Hao had long dreamed of immortality, and with so many immortals in the Marvel world, living only a mere 100 years would be unacceptable. It would be best if Little Devil could quickly obtain treasures like the 9 Transformations Golden Pill and the Jade Pool Peaches. After all, immortality in the Marvel world comes at a price unless one possesses racial innate talent. The Eastern tradition of immortality was more to Lin Hao's liking. However, randomness is too difficult to predict, so Lin Hao had to make an extra preparation, a strategic move. Su Wenwu and Jia Ying presented the easiest opportunities for immortality, and the cost was relatively low compared to other methods. Both were of Chinese descent, making SHIELD's intelligence network perfectly suited for them. Lin Hao donned a tactical suit, regained his form, donned a black metal mask, and hopped aboard a Wakandan fighter jet modified with technology from the worlds of One Piece and Dragon Ball. The modified fighter jet's top speed was capable of breaking Earth's gravity and entering low Earth orbit, but unfortunately, it was still far from capable of interstellar travel, and lacked interstellar jump technology. Neither Lin Hao nor SHIELD possessed a cosmic map, while Nick Fury, with his Skrulls and Big Mom's external support, surely possessed one. It's fair to say that SHIELD is one of Marvel's true children. Nick Fury has experienced countless adventures and possesses a wealth of experience far greater than even SHIELD, with its 2,000-year history. Although Zhang Heng experienced the Celestial Group incident and passed down the divinely slaying weapon, the Holy Spear, to his descendants, he lacked advanced aerospace technology. Unlike Black Salted Egg, who stumbled upon a shipload of fleeing aliens without even leaving his home and instantly became wealthy. Spaceships, star maps, everything he wanted. Yet, Nick Fury, possessing these crucial technologies for over a decade, never considered leading human civilization to the stars or expanding humanity's living space. Instead, he focused solely on protecting Earth, combating alien threats, and maintaining the world order established by America. Just do your job, and we will protect you from alien invasion. As for those caught up in the incident, well, there will always be death in the world. As long as the liberal order endures, America will remain forever great. Lin Hao will not indulge these liberal elites. His third goal, once his first 2 goals are achieved, is to help his fellow humans reach the stars. In poverty, one should focus on personal gain. In prosperity, one should contribute to the well-being of the world. Lin Hao wasn't that great, but he didn't mind doing what he could. Otherwise, after achieving immortality, would he just spend his days playing in the water with beautiful women? That would be tiresome. In any other world, he wouldn't have dared boast. After all, humanity knew nothing about the outer space. But in the Marvel Universe, civilizations abound, and there was no need to worry about getting lost. Lin Hao only lacked 3 things: his own strength, navigational skills, and the correct star map. If he encountered obstacles in achieving his 3 goals, such as SHIELD or the United States, he would crush them. With this thought in mind, Lin Hao switched on stealth mode and flew across the Atlantic, heading towards Afghanistan. He held a life card belonging to Tony Stark, made from a strand of hair he'd taken from him at the dinner that night. He wasn't going there to save anyone, but to find them. Upon arriving in Kuna Province, Afghanistan, Lin Hao slowed down and flew low in the direction indicated by the life card, dispersing his observation haki along the way. After a while, he finally located Tony Stark in a mountainous area. Lin Hao leaped from the plane, wielding a vibranium-forged Azure Dragon Crescent blade. Having copied some of Whitebeard's memories, Lin Hao had learned some of his sword techniques. He wasn't comfortable with an Aginata, preferring Guan Sheng's Azure Dragon Crescent blade to his more aesthetically pleasing style. Instead of rushing into the deep cave where Tony Stark was imprisoned, Lin Hao headed for the camp in the valley. "Who are you? Stop, fire!" The militants, upon noticing Lin Hao's undisputed approach, erupted in a flurry of verbal abuse. An invisible force swept through, sending all his men sprawling. Lin Hao entered the tent at the center of the camp and found the bald man leading the charge. He didn't wait for him to regain consciousness, nor did he waste time looking for water to pour over his head. Instead, he struck the bald man's arm. With a flash of the blade, the arm severed, its texture smoother than a dove's. The excruciating pain startled the bald man awake from his coma. He opened his eyes to see a black metal mask, and was instantly terrified. "Great Demon King, it seems I'm somewhat well known," a cold voice emanated from behind the metal mask. "Then don't waste time. Tell me where Su Wenwu is, and I'll give you a quick death." The bald man's expression changed drastically, a mixture of pain and fear. He had never imagined that kidnapping Tony Stark would attract this killer. The title of Great Demon King was more than just somewhat well known within the SHIE's sphere of influence. To organizations like them that profited from illicit means, it simply meant he was a psychopathic killer. While the Ten Rings Gang was an international organization, its leader, Su Wenwu, was Chinese. Most of the millennia-old elders had Chinese ancestry. These elders, in turn, would select one or two of their own children to inherit their power and wealth, resulting in a strong Chinese influence among the Ten Rings leadership. Furthermore, with leader Su Wenwu still alive, how could the gang dare to discriminate based on color? This gang, with its millennia-old heritage and deep roots in East and Southeast Asia, was impossible to abandon. Consequently, recent conflicts with the growing Divine Spear Bureau were inevitable, and the name Great Devil spread throughout the Ten Rings Gang. Lin Hao never held back against these scum, and to harvest more resentment from the living, his methods were brutal. To his enemies, the Great Devil was a psychopath, but to his colleagues in the Divine Spear Bureau, he was a reliable leader, albeit one that could easily break him down. No, I don't know," the bald man babbled incoherently at the side of the murderous psychopath. "We haven't seen the leader in years. Each gang is working independently now, waiting for the leader's return. We know his strength, and no one dares to rebel. I'm just here to make some extra money." The bald man burst into tears. He'd kidnapped an American, so why had he provoked the Great Devil? Lin Hao carefully observed his expression, and seeing that he clearly didn't know where Su Wenwu was, he had to strike with his sword. The bald man's head spun in the dirt, and his last glimpse saw the Great Devil turn and leave, sparing his men. Damn! Why didn't the henchman have to die? Does being a boss deserve discrimination? Lin Hao knew this trip was likely fruitless, so he was just hoping for a chance. Just as he was about to jump back into the plane, gunfire and the panicked cries of the militants rang out from the deep cave nearby. Lin Hao had controlled the direction of his conqueror's haki, so it didn't affect the people inside. The few militants who had narrowly escaped death hurried out, looking behind them in fear. A moment later, a ruggedly designed armored vehicle burst out, its movements more fluid and slender than those in the movies. Tony Stark, piloting the suit, was followed by Ethan, armed with a submachine gun. Perhaps Tony had been able to build the suit faster this time, and since Lin Hao had just arrived, he didn't sacrifice himself to buy time. As the two groups arrived at the cave entrance, they suddenly felt a sense of silence in the valley. They were then surprised to find that everyone in the valley had collapsed. Naturally, their attention turned to Lin Hao, wearing a black metal mask. "You are," Tony Stark paused, then asked in surprise, "Are you here to rescue me?" As a renowned American figure and a brilliant inventor, Tony was certain that many would be busy trying to rescue him if he disappeared. Lin Hao fell silent. He silently calculated the time and realized that only 2 months had passed since Tony's kidnapping, a significant decrease compared to the 3 months in the original novel. Seeing the obviously superior armor on Tony, and recalling the scene he had seen through Will Fortson's perspective, Lin Hao suddenly understood. Apparently, his previous experience with armor making had significantly sped up his efforts. But Tony Stark couldn't just run back now. Lin Hao didn't care what type of armor Tony used to escape, he only cared about the timing of his escape. With that, a domineering aura swept over them. The two groups at the cave entrance simultaneously collapsed. After finishing his task, Lin Hao pulled out his Den Mushi and called Saber. "I'll give you a chance to go on a mission. Come to Afghanistan and keep Tony Stark locked up for another month." "Huh?" Saber was stunned. "Don't want it, right?" Lin Hao asked back. "Yes." Saber couldn't wait. "I want it." Whoever he was, he finally made it back to the underworld. If he wasn't caught, he'd really have to be transferred to civilian work in the future. "Very good, wait for me to send you a message, and then let him go," Lin Hao hung up the phone with satisfaction. Stark Industries' stock price hadn't hit rock bottom yet, and Lin Hao hadn't started buying the dips yet, so how could he let him go? It didn't matter whether he made money or not, he couldn't lose the title of SHIE stock god. I just refreshed and saw that it was on the new book list. Even though it's 99th, I'm still a little excited. Chapter 34 Hydra needs talent like you. West of the Hudson River, southwest of Albany, lies a mountainous region spanning 4 counties known as the Catskill Mountains. This nature reserve boasts 98 peaks rising over 900 meters in elevation, home to a variety of animals, including black bears, deer, foxes, and even bald eagles. 3 months have passed since the Wall Street Red gangster murders. Adam Smith, who escaped the encirclement that day, has been holed up in the Catskill Mountains recuperating and practicing his swordsmanship. Rich in resources and food, and with a small town at the foot of the mountains, survival proved a breeze for Adam, possessing both internal strength and exceptional swordsmanship. The exorcism sword technique is a quick-learning martial art. Lin Pingzi, a young man with mediocre skills and mediocre aptitude, but remarkable for his character, only needed 2.5 months of practice to kill Yu Kang-hei and destroy the King Chang sect. After 3 months of arduous training, Adam Smith is undoubtedly a changed man. This sword technique, from the outside in, can enhance internal strength while practicing the sword. While it's not as effective as those renowned internal martial arts techniques, its rapidity and universality far surpass those requiring extremely high qualifications. The only requirement is a determined effort. In a low-level martial arts world like the smiling, proud wanderer, diligently practicing the exorcism sword technique for 2 or 3 months can vault one into the top ranks of a second-rate expert, even a top-tier goalkeeper. In the red pine forest, a red shadow swirled and danced around the pine trunks, occasionally flashing with sharp metallic light. Countless branches and leaves fell like a curtain of rain, each slender pine needle slashed by the sword's light, pattering like green needles falling from the sky. Suddenly, the red shadow landed on the top of a pine tree. Standing on the thin branches, the towering Adam Smith swayed up and down with them, avoiding the fall. The sharp blade returned to its sheath, and several of the surrounding tall, bare red pines collapsed with a crash. These trees had been chopped countless times, their debris held together by a wisp of ki. When the ki dissipated, the tangled debris collapsed, and the surrounding area instantly became a waste dump from the lumber mill. 3 months later, Adam Smith's chin was free of stubble. His internal energy had nourished the wounds all over his body, and his once rough skin had become smooth, rosy, and lustrous. His high hairline had dropped slightly, and his prematurely gray hair had returned to black. The hair he had grown for 3 months had extended below his earlobes. His lean figure had not expanded with muscle mass, but instead clung tightly to his frame, appearing even more slender, and a hint of charm etched itself between his features. He wore a red dress, and around his waist, a red roppongi he had found somewhere, filled with white wine from a nearby town. After practicing swordsmanship, Adam removed the gourd and, imitating Dongfang Bubei's movements, drank from it head first. Though a crude imitation, to those who had never seen Dongfang Bubei's heroic presence, he possessed a unique sense of elegance. Is he a man or a woman? A camouflage agent, holding binoculars, spotted Adam Smith's silhouette from behind a distant tree line, his voice filled with wonder. Doesn't the intelligence say he's a man? Shut up. Crossbones Brock Remlo muttered into the comms channel. While he had no idea why Adam Smith had become what he was, he knew he was an extremely dangerous individual. The brief, intense battle outside the New York Stock Exchange 3 months earlier had stunned the professionals at SHIELD. They analyzed the footage frame by frame, but they still couldn't fathom how Adam Smith, once an ordinary man, could transform into a powerful, transcendental being in just 1 day. The footage showed a brief burst of speed rivaling even Captain America's, not to mention the ability to easily cleave a blast shield with a simple stainless steel sword. Experts calculated from the footage that the sword's speed was approximately 100 meters per second. It was a joke. Not only could an ordinary stainless steel sword withstand such speed, it could even cleave through a polymer blast shield head-on, leaving a perfectly smooth, even incision. This isn't scientific at all. If the previous scenes were already challenging even the most physicists' perspective, then what Crossbones had just witnessed was like witnessing their legendary Hydra Majesty. In just a dozen seconds, a red figure, like a ghost, soared up and down several tall red pines, not only stripping away branches and leaves but also chopping the trunks into tiny pieces. Finally, it perched itself atop a branch less than half a meter long, refusing to fall. Is Captain America really that powerful? If Lord Red Skull had met this guy back then, wouldn't he have been chopped into a stick? Brock Rimlow's thoughts drifted wildly. Alexander Pierce, watching Crossbones' live broadcast from a villa in downtown New York, was stunned and incredulous. He's gotten even stronger. How did he do that? Previously, they had speculated that Adam Smith might have been enhanced by some drug, or perhaps a genetic mutation caused by some toxin or energy, or perhaps even the awakening of the Inhumans. Similar cases abounded. Hydra had witnessed and studied countless cases. Alexander Pierce had sent his men all the way up here, hoping to recruit them first, and if that didn't work, to enrich Hydra's resources. He had never expected to witness such a miraculous sight. How could he get stronger? How could he get even stronger? Pierce muttered to himself, his whiskey losing its flavor. Without a second thought, Pierce gave Crossbones a decisive order: contact him. As soon as the order came down, before Crossbones could even stand, a flash of red appeared on camera. Adam Smith, perched atop a tree over 500 meters away, suddenly appeared before the camera. I'll give you 3 seconds to tell me why I won't kill you. Adam Smith's voice softened, but the change in tone was still there, leaving it with a strange, effeminate quality. Even Crossbones, a veteran of many battles, broke out in a cold sweat. Seeing the opponent's hand already grasping the hilt of his sword, a sudden chill clung to his neck. Driven by an incredible will to survive, Crossbones blurted out, I have detailed information on your ex-wife's affair with someone. Adam Smith loosened his sword's hilt and held out his hand. Give it to me. This was truly unknown information. 3 months ago, he'd only killed a few who had taken advantage and were showing off. He had no idea how many more were lurking in the dark. The bitch was dead, but the adulterer must be slain as well. Crossbones quickly pulled out a portable hard drive and handed it over. Adam Smith took it and turned to leave. Wait, we at SHIELD, Crossbones quickly corrected himself. We at Hydra need someone like you. Perhaps the name Hydra struck a chord with Adam Smith, and he glanced back. I'll talk to him, Pierce, commanding from the remote, said quickly. Crossbones then pulled out a tactical tablet strapped to his waist, quickly switched on, and faced Adam Smith. Mr. Smith, my name is Alexander Pierce, former director of SHIELD and current minister of the World Security Council. We can use official channels to help you eliminate the negative impact from 3 months ago, and we can also calm the situation after you have your revenge, Pierce said sincerely. You are sincerely invited to join us. Are you Hydra? Adam Smith asked in surprise. The evil organization that was eliminated by Captain America in history books. Justice or evil is defined by humans. Pierce smiled confidently. We will soon have the power to define good and evil for ourselves. Interesting. Adam Smith suddenly showed a playful smile. This country is really interesting. With a laugh, he turned into a red shadow and disappeared. Sir, the mission failed, and Crossbones was inevitably uneasy. The contact information was left on the external hard drive. Right. Pierce was not in a hurry. He leisurely drank a glass of wine and said confidently, wait, he will definitely come to the door. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Tony, can you imagine the feeling of seeing hope and then suddenly despair? Despite being Marvel's officially certified genius, known as the man cursed by knowledge, Tony Stark has spent the past month feeling constantly inadequate. Why? Why did that black masked figure knock me out? What's the grudge between us? He was on the verge of escaping, only to be dragged back in and imprisoned for another month. Strangest of all, he's still being held by the same group of militants, now unarmed. And now, a new, much better equipped group is blocking the valley. It looks like the original group of militants has been confined to their cells. Every day, these captives must line up at the canteen at the valley's entrance to receive their meals, and then someone will be sent into the cave to deliver them to Tony and Ethan. During a nice, fresh breeze, Tony was surprised to discover that the captives were being ordered by those outside the valley to maintain cleanliness. Tents must be neatly pitched, with drainage ditches dug around them. Everyone must use the built-in toilets for defecation and urination. Anyone who dares to defecate or relieve themselves outdoors will be tied to a flagpole and left in the sun for a whole day, without food. The tents must also be kept clean daily, even the blankets must be neatly folded. Failure to meet any of these standards will result in punishment and food deprivation. Is this a kidnapped hostage, or a new recruit in training? When Tony Stark asked to clean the cave as well, he was refused. The reason was, he wasn't a hostage of the people outside the valley, but of the people inside, so he couldn't make demands on them. So, my vassal's vassal isn't my vassal? You've really figured out the medieval feudal system. Tony Stark couldn't figure it out, so he resorted to routinely asking Ethan, who spoke multiple languages, "Who are these guys outside the valley?" Ethan, expressionless, mechanically replied, "You've asked me 137 times." The group outside the valley wore uniform gray combat uniforms and black, plain masks. The few who entered and exited the valley didn't communicate at all, and Tony couldn't go outside, leaving him with no way to learn more. Yet, these guys appeared well-trained and well-equipped. When Tony woke up, his armor had vanished, leaving him unable to escape unarmed. Every day inside the valley was a repeat of the last. Just when Tony Stark thought he would be imprisoned forever, on the morning of the 30th day, the group outside the valley began dismantling their camp. Once the camp was dismantled, Saber, wearing a black mask, led his task force into the valley. The team, carrying boxes of weapons, approached the Ten Rings gang, while Saber personally led the team to return the armor to Tony Stark. "Put it on," Saber commanded coldly in English. "What?" Tony Stark was stunned. Saber ignored him, turning to face the Ten Rings gang, and spoke with equal indifference, "Grab your weapons, and wait until he's dressed in his armor, then you'll." Taking a deep breath, Saber stated the request personally given by the Big Devil, continue the battle from a month ago. Although he couldn't understand the Big Devil's bizarre request, he had to resolutely carry it out to stop being petty-minded. The Big Devil had done this kind of crazy thing many times in the past, things that ordinary people couldn't understand. X and Saber finished speaking, and the valley was dead silent. What was this operation? Saving and loading a game in a single-player game? Seeing the leader raise his wrist to check his watch after speaking, Tony and the Ten Rings gang realized that the other party was serious. "Ethan, help!" Tony hurriedly called for help. The Ten Rings quickly grabbed their crates of small arms, but facing the men Saber had brought, they didn't even dare to raise their fingers to the triggers. Over the past month, these militants had been tamed like rookies. Ethan frantically helped Tony don his armor, using the crane Saber had provided. "And you, grab your submachine guns," Saber pointed at the unarmed Ethan. "You two, go back to the cave entrance. The rest of you go and surround him. The rest of you stand back, right there." Saber acted like a commander on the scene, meticulously executing the instructions of a master of micromanagement. "Everyone, take your positions. Once we're gone, you can start fighting." The group quickly packed up and scurried out of the valley, disappearing into the endless yellow sand. The Ten Rings cautiously approached the valley entrance to peek in. Once they were sure they were gone, they cheered and burst into tears of joy. "They're gone. These demons are finally gone. God bless you, amen." Tony Stark's emotions were shattered, but he realized this was the perfect opportunity to escape, and he immediately opened fire on the Ten Rings. Although he had seen them treated harshly over the past month, Tony hadn't forgotten how they treated him a month earlier. Even now, he still had a magnet stuck in his chest. The jubilant Ten Rings were suddenly attacked and fought back, but their small arms were powerless against Tony's armor. Two flamethrowers unleashed dragons of fire, engulfing the valley in flames. Tony, holding Ethan, soared into the sky. They flew a little further than in the book, but the armor still disintegrated in midair. After all, everything in the cave was done by hand, and the tools were not as precise as Tony's own. The joints were bound to be weak and unable to withstand the immense pulling force. In the sky, aboard a stealth transport, Saber breathed a sigh of relief as he saw Tony Stark's successful escape and the approaching U.S. helicopters. "Director, mission accomplished, target escaped successfully." Just hearing his words, anyone would have assumed his mission was to rescue someone. "Very good, you'll be back on the team from now on." Lin Hao, seen in the video, waved. "Thank you, Director," Saber exulted. The hard times of the past few years were finally over. Far away in New York, Lin Hao had already completed his bargain hunting acquisition of Stark Industries. Unfortunately, Only 31% of the shares were publicly traded, with Tony Stark holding over 42% and Obadiah holding 20%. The remaining scattered shares were held by stubborn retail investors and a few insider institutions or individuals. Obadiah was the mastermind behind the stock market saga, so naturally he wouldn't sell out. He'd been planning to buy at the bottom, but he'd suddenly lost contact with the 10 rings for the past month. He was worried, terrified, and fearful that Tony Stark had returned and was hiding in the dark, gathering evidence. He'd lost interest in the stock market. Until today, when he received advance news that Tony had been rescued by the Air Force and was en route to a base in Afghanistan, Obadiah ordered his traders to start buying at the bottom. "Sir, all the sell orders for Stark Industries have disappeared," the trader was surprised. Stark Industries' stock price had been plummeting for the past 3 months, so much so that he hadn't bothered to check it. Now, he saw the sell orders were gone. If he still didn't realize what was happening, he didn't deserve to be on Wall Street. "Sir, is Tony Stark coming back?" Obadiah naturally didn't answer, and the old man smashed the phone in his hand in anger. "Who is it?" Obadiah couldn't help but suspect the 10 Rings gang, who had been missing for a month, muttered to himself, "Could it be these filthy bugs? Damn it. They're not satisfied with their commissions, yet they dare to steal my stock." Obadiah resolved to test Tony's words and go to the desert. If it was really these bugs behind this, he swore to kill them. Meanwhile, Tony, aboard the plane, complained to his friend Roddy, who had been searching for him for 3 months. "You don't know what I've been through these past 3 months. Roddy, looking at the magnet on his friend's chest, sighed deeply. "I know, no, you don't." Tony, at this moment, was about to transform into Xianglin Sao. "I thought I'd escaped a month ago, but I never expected such a perverted group to show up. They've kept me captive for another month." Can you imagine that feeling of hope and then despair? They're absolutely insane. A new month. Please vote, bookmark, and read. Chapter 36, One Chicken, Many Meals. In a Manhattan hotel suite, Lin Hao lay before him, several cell phones, each representing a different alias, connecting him to a corresponding stockbroker. In front of a white home theater screen, a grayish-white snail shone 2 rays of light from its eyes, projecting them onto the screen. In the image, Zheng Xian was simultaneously directing the various investment banks, financial companies, and foundations operated by the SHIEA, distributing operations to avoid scrutiny from the SEC. "It's time to show you the power of the SHIEA, stock odd." Lin Hao's expression was solemn and serious. Zheng Xian on the screen resisted the urge to roll his eyes and said unhappily, "You've already bought the dip. Now just wait for Tony Stark to arrive and cash out at a high price. Do you really need to call me over? Do you think I have nothing to do every day? Don't you just fiddle with that orchid in the office every day?" Lin Hao retorted, "Wipe 8 leaves back and forth all day long. Isn't that boring? There are only 7 left now." Zheng Xian gritted his teeth and stared at Lin Hao. "I accidentally cut off one the night you left." "Really?" Lin Hao chuckled. "Then the code has to be 7 leaves from now on. I'll give you a suggestion. Paint the 7 leaves different colors. Put them together and maybe you can make a wish." The background showed that Zheng Xian, who hadn't given Lin Hao any grudges for many years, was back to racking up points. "Okay, let's get down to business." Lin Hao returned to the point. "Let me show you what killing 2 birds with 1 stone means." After saying that, Lin Hao began to change his voice while making calls. After receiving instructions from their financial backers, several Wall Street stockbrokers began placing buy orders for Stark Industries, with a buy price significantly higher than yesterday's. This was a signal. Retail investors and institutions closely monitoring the stock market immediately noticed this change. Those with access to information quickly questioned Stark Industries insiders, some even contacting the military and the CIA for confirmation. Only when the Afghan air base confirmed the information did Wall Street begin to flutter. More buy orders appeared, driving the buy price ever higher. However, the remaining shares on the market had long been in the hands of Lin Hao and the SHIE, with only a small portion still held by stubborn retail investors and institutions with inside information. As news of Tony Stark's successful rescue spread, buy orders for Stark Industries on the stock exchange piled up, driving the buy price ever higher. Lin Hao, by selling with one hand and buying with the other, continuously created small orders, pushing up the real-time stock price. U.S. stock trading differs from A-shares in that it employs multiple order placement methods, allowing for continued bids before existing buy orders are fully absorbed. Furthermore, U.S. stocks operate on a T+0 trading system, allowing same-day trading with no price limits. The SEC only regulates unusual stock price fluctuations. For example, a price fluctuation exceeding 30% or 50% triggers a circuit breaker, typically restricting trading for several minutes or even hours. If irregularities are detected, trading is frozen; otherwise, normal trading is lifted. Retail investors, who had been late to the game, finally caught on when new buy orders for Stark Industries continued to appear just a few minutes later. This effectively validated the legitimacy of these buy orders, effectively confirming Tony Stark's impending return. Stark Industries' stock price had plummeted over the past 3 months. With Tony Stark's return, it was bound to recover, and even slightly increase due to retail investor enthusiasm. As long as the purchase price was lower than the price 3 months prior, any purchase was a profit. With such a clear trend, even a novice in the stock market could secure a profit. Consequently, retail investors poured in, driving the purchase price even higher. When the price climbed to within $0.50 of its previous high, Lin Hao ordered traders to increase their selling volume. The increasing number of trades in the market naturally attracted the attention of interested parties. Mr. Stanley, the sell orders are increasing, and the price is approaching what it was 3 months ago. Should we still buy in? The trader called Obadiah Stanley. Meanwhile, the bald old man was waiting for the press conference. In a few hours, Tony Stark would arrive at the airport on an Air Force transport plane and then arrive. Buy, Obadiah said fiercely. I can tolerate another $2 in price increase. He had intended to buy at a low price to expand his holdings, but he hadn't made his move before someone else snatched him away. He was forced to buy now at a high price. He had already decided that even if Tony Stark returned, he would find another opportunity to defeat him and take over Stark Industries. America was a capitalist world, and Obadiah wasn't Tony Stark's heir. He had no better way to expand his holdings than through commercial means. Seeing Lin Hao begin selling heavily, Zheng Xian couldn't help but wonder, with Tony Stark's return, the stock price should see a slight increase. Why sell now? That's unlike you. Didn't you say I lack foresight? Lin Hao said proudly. This time, I'll show you what it means to be prophetic. He then pulled out his Den Mushi and dialed right in front of Zheng Xian. 12,357, Weather Witch. At that moment, over the Atlantic Ocean, the Weather Witch clutched a Den Mushi in one hand and a locator in the other. Sis, Tony Stark's plane will be arriving soon. Buy me some time. If you haven't sold all the stock yet, I'll give you 5 points as a service fee. Only 5 points. The Weather Witch, floating over the Atlantic, mimicked Lin Hao's lines. Wouldn't I be begging for food then? I'll have to pay more. Sis, do you know how much I can make this time? Lin Hao's proud voice came over. At least $5 billion. So much? The Weather Witch was astonished. Stark Industries' market capitalization is only a little over 30 billion. How many shares are there in circulation? Even though the shares aren't many, I can grab a lot. Deal. For the sake of the money, the Weather Witch, without a word, rushed towards Tony's plane. Not long after, a large thunderstorm cloud suddenly appeared in the clear sky, blocking the plane's path. The transport pilot, seeing the cloud from afar, was so frightened that he quickly changed direction. But before he had flown far, another thunderstorm cloud appeared in front of him. The transport plane went up and down, like a roller coaster. What's going on? Rhoda burst into the cockpit. Is the professionalism of pilots so poor these days? Sir, for some reason, thunderstorms are suddenly everywhere around the route, forcing us to keep turning. The pilot looked aggrieved. This was strange. The weather data clearly indicated a clear route for the day. Upon hearing the news, Tony Stark, who was on a roller coaster, muttered to himself, "This feeling is so familiar." Thus, the press conference originally scheduled for before lunch was delayed until 4 p.m. Lin Hao successfully cashed out all his stocks at a high price. But that wasn't the end. Tony Stark, arriving late, suddenly announced a bombshell at the press conference. Stark Industries was shutting down its weapons manufacturing division. Investors, still holding on to their stocks, were stunned for a moment before immediately placing sell orders. The Stark Industries stock chart created the sharpest angle in Wall Street history, with the rising green line and the falling red line practically touching. Come on, we can eat this chicken again." Lin Hao rubbed his hands together. Zheng Xian, in the video, looked puzzled. "Did you hypnotize him this month?" "No, he was self-inspired. and I observed it with my keen intuition. Lin Hao was full of pride, gloating. Now you can't deny my foresight and keen intuition, right? But then, does Stark Industries still have value? Zheng Xian didn't understand Lin Hao's reason for buying the dip again. Instead of selling weapons, Tony Stark is going to sell sesame cakes instead, arc reactors, Lin Hao reminded him. I see, Zheng Xian suddenly understood, and couldn't help but admire Lin Hao's chicken-eating behavior. Well, Tony Stark has been eaten 3 times, first shorting, then buying the dip at a low price and cashing out at a high price, and now buying the dip again and waiting to cash out. No, I can eat it a 4th time. Lin Hao raised his eyebrows mysteriously. After he announces his entry into the energy sector and drives up the stock price, another stakeholder will file a patent infringement lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court. Zheng Xian was silent, feeling a little sorry for Tony Stark. A decent chicken gets eaten too many times and only dies once, but Tony Stark, the unreliable one, gets eaten 4 times by the devil. The first round of trial promotions begins at midnight. If the follow-up rate isn't high enough, the recommendation will be removed and won't appear again. Please, everyone, please help me by clicking in and scrolling down once a day. Thank you so much. Chapter 37. Who said Hydra can't have superheroes? Some people can still eat more than they can chew, while others are left with only nostalgia. Adam Smith discovered he had developed a bad habit. When hunting down adulterers, he would always stab them in the groin before slicing them piece by piece. He also discovered his aversion to women was growing stronger. The more beautiful they were, the more disgusted he became. Seeing their coquettish behavior made him want to stab them. The same was true with ugly men. The handsome and attractive ones would attract him. No, Adam Smith tried to control himself, constantly telling himself, Master Dongfang is my only pursuit in this life. If it were just a character in a movie, Adam Smith wouldn't have taken it seriously. But he saw with his own eyes that Dongfang Bubei crawled out of the TV, granted him magical powers, and changed his miserable life. This proved that Master Dongfang was real. Although the videotape disappeared afterwards, it only demonstrated Master Dongfang's miraculousness and greatness. The powerful and beautiful Master Dongfang became Adam Smith's lifelong pursuit. He had to become even stronger to be worthy of standing by Master Dongfang's side. With another swing of the sword, he sent a fellow swimmer down to continue playing in the water with Mrs. Smith. The apartment was a sea of blood crimson, the red dress, unstained, yet strikingly vibrant. With a swaying figure, the man in red appeared at the doorway. Crossbones, waiting outside, waved, and the Hydra team followed him in, filing in and beginning the methodical cleanup of the scene. Ever since his encounter with Hydra, Adam Smith no longer had to worry about post-mortem cleanup. He could enjoy professional service. Crossbones, a true Hydra hard worker, had seen his previous recruitment attempt fail, fully embodying his no waiting, no relying approach. He mobilized his own initiative, dispatching men to await Adam Smith's intended murder scene. Whenever he finished a murder, he would bring in professional forensics personnel to clean up the mess. Crossbones never lingered, simply working quietly and leaving when he was done. Honestly, even Adam Smith, a stockbroker in sales, admired Crossbones' perseverance and sense of proportion. Despite Mrs. Smith's wide social connections and numerous friends, Adam Smith's efficiency was no match. It took him over a week to finish the job. That night, Adam Smith stood on the rooftop of the apartment where the last adulterer lived, gazing at the bright moon and drinking. A strange sense of emptiness washed over him. With his revenge avenged and his adulterer dead, what would he do next? Continuous practice, following in the footsteps of Master Dongfang, would be his ultimate goal. One always needs something to occupy their time, right? After disposing of the bodies in the apartment, Crossbones cautiously made his way to the rooftop. This was the last adulterer in the file, and it was time to extend another invitation. Otherwise, Adam Smith would disappear, or wait for him to contact him later. Mr. Smith, Mr. Pierce cordially invites you to join. Suddenly, an explosion echoed from afar. 4 jets of flame appeared in the night sky, 2 in front and 2 behind. Adam Smith, possessing a powerful inner strength, had excellent eyesight, and he immediately discerned 2 humanoid machines soaring through the night sky. The one in front was sleek and graceful, painted gold and red. The one behind was bulky and black. Its jets even thicker than the one in front. Crossbones immediately grabbed his tactical tablet, connected to the SHIELD network, and watched the live feed. Smith. These two machines, piloted by Tony Stark and Obadiah Stane, have engaged in a conflict. This was the conclusion anyone with a discerning eye could see. The two machines were constantly exchanging blows in the night sky, firing cannons, missiles, and even energy beams, sometimes even engaging in bare-chested blows. Interesting, Adam Smith suddenly thought. As he pondered his plan, he turned to Crossbones. What do you think about me becoming a superhero, huh? Crossbones was stunned. A superhero, like Captain America? Adam Smith's thoughts grew more and more excited, his eyes lighting up, his body trembling. If I became a superhero, I'd definitely attract a lot of attractive women. Crossbones remained stunned. Forgive his slowness, this time, he really didn't follow Adam Smith's train of thought. But he understood his point. You want to be a superhero, isn't that possible? Adam Smith turned around with a playful smile. Didn't you say you could help me smooth over public opinion? Then I'd stop being a murderer. Why can't I be a superhero? Oh, Crossbones quickly pulled out his communicator and called his superiors. Please wait a moment. I'll check. Alexander Pierce, upon receiving the news, was also stunned. But as a senior executive, he immediately thought of the potential benefits of this move. Indeed, who said Hydra couldn't have superheroes? As long as Hydra kept creating new superheroes, it wouldn't be long before they became a frontline organization. Ordinary people have short memories. World War II is long gone, and fewer older people know about Hydra's deeds. Young people are accustomed to questioning authority and resisting propaganda. Even if history books describe Hydra as an evil organization, as long as people today believe Hydra is just, then Hydra will represent justice. If Hydra represents justice, then Captain America, who defeated Hydra, will become the embodiment of evil. Alexander Pierce's thoughts grew increasingly excited, so much so that he couldn't stop jumping around the villa. This would be a crucial step in their Hydra's whitewashing. Great, Mr. Smith, go for it with confidence. We will fully support you in becoming a superhero, replacing Rogers and becoming the spiritual symbol of the new generation of America. Ha 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 ha. Adam Smith couldn't empathize with Alexander Pierce. His own desire to become a superhero differed from the others' fantasies. However, the goal was the same. As long as Hydra was willing to support them and help smooth over public opinion, that would be enough. Everything Adam would do in the future would require the support of public opinion. Excellent. Help me analyze which of these two will win. Adam Smith pointed at the two machines in the night sky, his lips curled up. Of course, a superhero should be on the winning side. By then, Crossbones had found more detailed information in the SHIELD database. The Golden Red machine is piloted by Tony Stark. This type of external full-body armor has never been seen before. It's likely a new weapon invented by Tony Stark, a genius. Crossbones spoke rapidly, delivering his conclusion. I think he has a good chance of winning. I think so too. The big guy is too ugly. It's obvious he can't win. Adam Smith fastened the wine guard at his waist and, with a flicker, transformed into a red shadow. He stepped onto the tall building and rushed towards the battlefield. This would be his debut as a superhero. Chapter 38, Your name is Iron Man? My name is Red Swordsman. Tony, you said you'd stop making weapons, but you ended up making the most powerful one yet. Obadiah, driving the Ironmonger, held up an Audi. Inside, women and children were screaming. Haha, Obadiah laughed wildly. I like this dress, put them down, Tony Stark shouted. Tony, they deserved it. Before he could finish his words, Obadiah felt his grip lighten. A red figure appeared, wielding a longsword. The Audi's roof flew open, and the red figure, with one hand, grabbed a little imp and leaped into the air. In the blink of an eye, the red figure appeared on the street in the distance. After putting the two imps down, he rushed back to the car and repeated the same act. Damn woman, giving birth to four in one go? Adam Smith couldn't hide his dislike for the beautiful woman, thinking, HMPH, they definitely aren't her husbands. After rescuing the four imps, Adam Smith stepped towards Obadiah, allowing him to see the person clearly. Asshole, how dare you ruin my plan? Obadiah didn't recognize the man. On the day of the Red Gangster murders, he was preoccupied with the success of his kidnapping plan. How could he have cared less about the murders on Wall Street? In a free America, there were always casualties. Hey, friend, Tony Stark didn't even know Adam Smith. When he first became famous in New York, he had already been blown up by his own bomb. But now, seeing him trying to save someone, Tony considered him a helper. While curious about how his frail frame could burst forth with such incredible speed and strength, now was not the time to dwell on such matters. "Can you rescue the lady up there?" Tony asked. "Just like you did just now." Adam Smith ignored him. Not killing a beautiful woman was already a step forward in his plan. How could he expect him to save someone? He unsheathed his sword, and the flash of its blade pierced Ironmonger's right eye. The polymer lens was easily pierced. Fortunately, Obadiah's armor was spacious, and the flash of the sword grazed his scalp. Having slashed hundreds of people and slashed countless human flesh, Adam was already familiar with the feel of a cut. As he pierced the lens, he realized the opponent was positioned below him. Ironmonger was attacked, and Obadiah instinctively retreated, causing the Audi in his hands to slip to the right. Tony quickly stepped forward to catch the Audi. The female driver was clearly dissatisfied with the panoramic sunroof and kept screaming her objections. Her high-heeled feet pressed firmly on the accelerator, causing all four wheels to spin non-stop. As Tony slowly lowered the Audi, the female driver, clad in her golden red armor, rushed forward, sparks flying all the way. This female driver was the first to engage Iron Man at close range, but it's a shame her name hasn't been remembered. Departing after her mission is complete, concealing her achievements and fame. This is the spirit of the night. Just as Tony Stark finally managed to escape the awkward position of a close-range attack by lifting the Audi's chassis, Adam Smith had already launched a renewed attack on Ironmonger. His figure was lightning fast, his sword flashing like thunder. The longsword in his hand continuously sliced at the thick armor covering Ironmonger's abdomen. Honestly, big, thick, and black often signifies strength and durability. A blade imbued with internal energy can easily cut through steel and iron. However, to talk about toxicity without considering the dosage is sheer folly, as is to talk about protection without considering the thickness. A sword can cut through iron, but the iron is too thick. For a moment, Adam Smith was unable to penetrate Ironmonger's armor. Obadiah felt the same way. While the enemy couldn't hurt him for the time being, he couldn't hit the nimble Adam Smith either. Ironmonger was inherently unwieldy, relying on sheer force to achieve his goals. Dealing with the slender and agile Tony had always felt like using a cannon to smite a mosquito. Now facing the faster and more nimble Adam, his strength was even more limited. "Damn flea, is all you can do to run away?" Obadiah roared in frustration. Adam Smith's words flared. He leaped up, landing on Ironmonger's shoulder. His sword flew, slicing at its massive head. The armor on top was weak, and it wasn't long before its crown was ripped open. A gust of cold wind blew in, and Obadiah, inside the armor, happened to look up and behold Adam's impassive face. "It's over." His driver's seat was a fair distance from his head, but not far enough to avoid the enemy's blade. One single thrust from Adam would have ripped Obadiah's head clean apart. Ironmonger began to tremble violently, trying to throw the foe off his shoulder. But Adam Smith kept absorbing the force, like a leech on his tarsal bone. Infusing his inner energy into the sword, Adam raised it and thrust it down. Something unexpected happened. The sword in his hand could no longer withstand the force, shattering into pieces. It was originally a simple stainless steel sword, displayed as a work of art in the Chinatown Martial Arts School, and Adam Smith had it sharpened with a sander afterward. After over 3 months of use, having cut through over 100 people, and just now, clashing head-on with armor, the blade was already riddled with cracks and gouges. This final surge of internal energy ignited it, unexpectedly and unsurprisingly, and shattered. The shattered blade hurled itself at Obadiah, inflicting wounds on his forehead and shoulder, but not a single fatal strike. The bald man cried out in agony, his blood splattering. "Hey, friend," Tony, finally returning to the battlefield, began his attack with a stern rebuke. "Your weapon doesn't seem to be durable." The gash on Ironmonger's head was too small. While he could reach in without his sword, it would be unseemly. This was Adam Smith's debut, and Hydra reporters had already arrived by helicopter over the battlefield, broadcasting the scene live to the world. Reaching in and getting a bloody hand would not only be disreputable, but also disgusting. With these thoughts in mind, Adam Smith retreated gracefully, returning to the street to search for suitable tools. Ironmonger resumed his close combat with Tony, igniting a hail of gunfire. A helicopter overhead focused its camera on the battlefield, with a prominent commentator broadcasting live. "Hi, everyone, Henry the Mouth is broadcasting live from Manhattan. We can see 2 humanoid robots engaging in combat below. Who are they? Why are they fighting? Henry will reveal the secrets, The Hydra-controlled media focused their cameras on Adam Smith, expressing their exclamations in exaggerated tones. "Oh my God, guess who I saw? It's the wanted killer by the New York police, Adam Smith, but I saw him just save 4 children from danger. Why did he save them? Is Adam Smith really a killer? Would a killer risk his life to save children? Could the New York police have made a mistake?" With just a few words, these reporters successfully piqued the audience's curiosity about Adam Smith and their confusion about the Red Man murder case. The power of the media is evident. Adam Smith finally found a slender steel pipe on the street. While it wasn't as easy to wield as a longsword, he had to make his debut a success. Re-entering the fray, Tony had already launched an energy blast from his chest, sending Ironmonger flying. Adam, finding the perfect moment, dove above him. The pipe pierced his target, completing his plan. Obadiah instantly fell to the ground, and Ironmonger thrashed twice before falling silent. Seeing this, Tony had to withdraw his attack. A helicopter swooped down from the sky, and when it was only a meter above the ground, reporters eagerly jumped out. They surrounded Adam and Tony. Tony was about to leave when he heard Adam's words. "Who am I?" In response to the reporters' questions, Adam Smith stated his code name. "My name is Red Swordsman." Suddenly, flashbulbs burst forth. Tony, about to leave, was displeased. When had someone else upstaged him? He turned around, opened his visor, and revealed his true appearance. "Oh my God, it's Tony Stark." The reporter who had just rushed towards Adam Smith ran back, his guns pointed at Tony. "Mr. Stark, do you have a code name?" When had Tony Stark ever been a supporting actor in his life? After a moment's hesitation, Tony spoke the line with a hint of pride. "I am Iron Man." Chapter 39. Don't panic, just listen to me. Mr. Smith is not a murderer, he's a hero. This was a press conference specially organized by Hydra, featuring none other than Adam Smith, the Red Swordsman who had made a stunning appearance on the streets of Manhattan the previous night. The Wall Street murders had occurred in full public view, and the consequences could not be quietly erased, they had to be whitewashed openly. After Alexander Pierce revealed his superhero project to other Hydra executives, it sparked considerable interest. After some wrangling, they decided to invest resources in Adam Smith. At the press conference, human rights lawyer Ben Corenson delivered a passionate speech, a stunning success. Reporters at the scene were awestruck, snapping away, their cameras flashing rapidly. Meanwhile, a group of special guests at the back of the venue had grim expressions, casting angry glances at the lawyers on stage and Adam Smith, who was watching the action. They were the New York Police Department, including some of the Manhattan officers who had participated in the fight that day. They refrained from rushing in to arrest the suspects because Hydra's top brass had given the city government the green light, and a legally licensed security company was maintaining order at the conference with live ammunition. "Yes, I think Mr. Smith is a true hero," Ben Corenson emphasized again, his expression serious and his tone sincere, as if he were stating the truth. Adam Smith couldn't help but turn his head, slightly surprised. "How could I not know how great I am?" Ben Corenson happened to turn his head, and their eyes met. He gave him a reassuring look. "Don't panic, listen to me. Maybe no one knows why Mr. Smith killed those people on Wall Street." Ben Corenson pressed the remote control, and a picture appeared on the screen behind him. It showed a graceful blonde woman. "This is Mrs. Smith." "No, or rather, she used to be." The photo shifted to the left, and a dense array of male names appeared in the blank space on the right. Each name had a link. Clicking on it would reveal the person's profile and a video of him and Mrs. Smith being intimate. Flashes went off again, and all the cameras focused on the screen, zooming in. Suddenly, traffic to many TV stations and online portals across the United States skyrocketed. "Showing us this? We're really excited." The regulators were temporarily blinded, and all the footage was played without reservation. Ben Corenson was experienced. After attracting enough traffic, he reduced the video window and continued to display the men's profiles to prove their authenticity. "Incredible, simply unimaginable," Corenson said in an exaggerated tone. "This former Mrs. Smith has developed a total of 164 regular lovers in the past 8 years, except for 1 week a month. She has had intimate relations with a different man almost every day, and not one of them is her legal husband, although he had achieved his revenge." Seeing these images brought back bad memories for Adam Smith, and his face darkened. This expression was spread by the media. The men in front of the screen couldn't help but feel sympathy. "This guy is so pitiful." At first, She would try to avoid Mr. Smith, but later she would bring men home directly, even in front of him. Wow! A hushed exclamation echoed in the audience. The men looked at Adam Smith with increasing sympathy. Among those Mr. Smith killed on Wall Street were his colleagues, his superiors, and his boss, all of whom had made peace with his ex-wife at Mr. Smith's home, but Mr. Smith, to keep his job and give his child a complete family, repeatedly tolerated it for 8 years, even though the child wasn't his. As these words spread, many men in front of the screen fell silent, no longer focused on the erotic scenes, but instead empathized with those who had suffered the same fate. I just want to ask everyone, is this fair? Ben Cronson struggled to suppress his anger, tears welling in his eyes. Yes, Mr. Smith killed someone and violated federal law, but please don't forget, the Star-Spangled Banner protects those who burn it, and the U.S. Constitution gives citizens the right to take up arms when their rights are violated. As for the outcome of the resistance, it all depends on whose weapons are more advanced. An arms dealer kindly reminds everyone, to protect yourself and your family, remember to update your weapons regularly. Today, Mr. Smith will surrender to the New York police. But rest assured, we will form a defense team with the 10 largest law firms in the United States to defend Mr. Smith's rights and ensure justice is restored to the lives of many men who share his story. Mr. Smith is a hero, a man driven to take up arms against the pervasive sexual practices. Remember, America's greatness stems from the bravery of the people of Boston and the gunfire in Lexington, not from the increasingly promiscuous women in the sewers. This last sentence sent American men into a frenzy, and women into a frenzy, especially boxers. It practically pierced their lungs. In an instant, online portals flooded with female abuse, and television stations were flooded with complaints. Fuck you. This is undermining gender equality. Why can men find women everywhere, but women can't? Idiot men, you crawled out of the sewers. Thus began a war between men and women in America. But what does this have to do with Adam Smith? The press conference was a resounding success. Not only did it explain Adam Smith's motive for murder to the nation, it also successfully sowed discord between the man and the woman, thereby oblivious to the nature of the murder. What followed was nothing more than a standard criminal defense. With his sleek legal team, Adam Smith wouldn't have to utter a single word to win the sympathy of the jury, a jury that could easily be filled with Hydra. Wow, this guy is pathetic. Tony Stark watched the entire press conference from his luxurious Malibu villa. After fighting Obadiah last night, Tony had been intrigued by the sudden appearance of Adam Smith. After researching his profile, even his womanizing self couldn't help but admire the deceased Mrs. Smith. "What's up?" Pepper Potts approached, holding a tablet, and teased with a smile. "Are you reminiscing about the old days?" Tony gave a bitter smile, a hint of regret for having confessed so soon. "There's a board meeting tomorrow, with a new major shareholder. You should think about the company's future direction, or Stark Industries will soon be bankrupt." Pepper Potts held her tablet up to Tony. Tony glanced at the steep red line on the stock chart and shrugged. "It seems they've forgotten I'm a genius after being gone for over 3 months. Pepper Potts rolled her eyes and continued with her itinerary. "There's also someone from the Strategic Homeland Defense Assault." Pepper glanced down again before continuing. "You've got an agent from the Department of Logistics and Support scheduled for tomorrow." Disgusting government agent. Tony curled his lips. The press conference had a profound impact. Unlike many men who sympathized with Adam Smith, Sheriff George Stacy of Queens was furious. "Asshole, this is a blasphemy against the law." The shouting woke the little girl in the room. The blonde girl pushed open the door and timidly said, "Daddy." George quickly forced a flimsy smile and squatted down to comfort his daughter. "Gwen, Daddy just has a blockage in his throat, so he had to shout a few more times." He feigned a cough as he spoke. "Look, Daddy's feeling much better now." George stroked his daughter's head and said with a smile, "You're going to your new school tomorrow, so get to bed early tonight." George Stacy was the former Manhattan Borough Sheriff. His daring and tough style earned him the respect of his colleagues and made him a top candidate for the next borough commissioner. Now, however, he's been transferred to Queens as sheriff. No one cares about the colleagues killed by Adam Smith, and those injured will likely lose their benefits soon. Right now, men across America are concerned about justice for Adam Smith, but who cares about justice for the injured and killed officers? Justice shouldn't be this way. George, his expression gloomy, didn't notice the black videotape appear on the living room coffee table. "This book is in the first round of trial promotion. I ask brothers for a favor, come in and scroll twice a day to keep the follow-up rate." Thank you very much as for adding more chapters. I am writing a little more every day, but now there is a mandatory listing rule. The word count must reach 150,000 to be listed, and it can be delayed to 200,000 words at most. I am currently writing about 5,000 words a day, and it will be forced to be listed on the 20th at the latest. However, the collection base is too small, and the first order result cannot be high. I can only delay it for 2 more days, and then do another round of trial promotion or even classified strong promotion. I promise that when it is listed, I will upload all the chapters accumulated in these days, without leaving a single drop. So, everyone please do me a favor and keep the follow-up rate, otherwise the recommendation will be cancelled. Woo woo. Chapter 40. What does what Kurosaki Ichigo did have to do with me, Lin Hao? The next morning, Tony Stark arrived in New York from California. As he entered Stark Tower, he saw several men in black suits. Happy, are they hiring for security? Tony deliberately glanced at his bodyguard, Happy, and whispered, are these your men, Mr. Stark? I'm Phil Coulson. Coulson stepped forward and offered his hand. Level 7 agent from the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Agency. What job? Tony tilted his ear, indicating he hadn't heard clearly. Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Agency, Coulson repeated, adding, it's an organization founded by your father, Howard Stark. As expected, Tony Stark's expression changed. Nick Fury hadn't intended to tell Tony these things too soon, but he hadn't expected Tony to reveal his identity on the spot last night, intervening in the other side of this world beforehand. You better not be kidding me. Tony stared at Coulson intently. Coulson waved, and an agent behind him came forward with a metal box and placed it at Tony's feet. Here are some things your father left behind. Take a look. Coulson handed Tony a business card. If you want to know more, feel free to contact me. Coulson had intended to chat with Tony about his experiences in Afghanistan, but sensing Tony's reluctance, he quickly ended the conversation and left. Tony Stark's expression was complex, a mix of curiosity, resentment, and the urge to show off to his parents after receiving a red flower. Pepper couldn't bear to watch and said, Happy, take the box up for the boss. Happy glanced at the boss, but seeing no reaction, she bent down and lifted the box. Just then, a young Asian man walked into Stark Tower, passing Coulson. The Asian face caught Coulson's eye. With his 7th level agent mastery, he naturally remembered it. Lin Hao, his gaze fixed on Tony Stark, entered the building and strode towards him. The security guards in the lobby spotted him, quickly put their hands on their waists, pointed at Lin Hao, and shouted, don't move. Don't go any further. Lin Hao stopped, ignoring the guards, still looking at Tony Stark. Pepper saw he looked familiar and quickly pulled out her tablet for comparison. Then she waved the guards off. Don't worry, this gentleman is a new board member. Tony turned around at the voice and saw an unfamiliar Asian face. Tony, his name is Ichigo Kurosaki. He's acquired over 35% of Stark Industries stock, making him the new major shareholder, Pepper whispered. He proposed today's board meeting. Tony Stark wasn't clueless about business, he was just too lazy to deal with mundane matters. A sudden, major shareholder, holding over a third of the shares, proposing a board meeting right out of nowhere was clearly a bad omen. However, Tony, naturally proud, disdained any pretense. He simply glanced at them and headed for the elevator. Pepper, however, took the initiative to greet him, first asking in her half-baked Japanese, hello, Mr. Kurosaki, do you require an interpreter? Lin Hao shook his head and replied in a pure American accent, thank you, I can understand you. Pepper gave an awkward smile, she had been speaking a little too loudly to Tony earlier. The group boarded the elevator and arrived at the executive meeting room. Tony and Lin Hao were the only 2 people in the large room. Although retail investors still held nearly 3% of the shares, they were not eligible to sit on the board of directors and hold a say. Tony Stark had already discussed this in the elevator. He only held 42% of the shares, while the Japanese held 35%, a relatively small difference. The remaining 20% was held by the dead Obadiah. America is a capitalist nation. No matter what shady tricks the capitalists may resort to, they must abide by the rules of the game that everyone has established. Stark Industries was co-founded by Obadiah and Howard, so it's natural for Obadiah to own a certain share. However, Tony isn't Obadiah's heir, and even if you were to attempt to murder him, Obadiah's assets wouldn't automatically transfer to Tony. However, Tony could petition the board of directors to strip Obadiah's heir of his voting rights, or even petition the court to remove him as a shareholder, arguing he was attempting to murder a fellow shareholder, and then acquire those shares. Originally, after he announced the dissolution of the weapons division, the stock price plummeted, making it easy for Tony to raise funds and acquire all of Obadiah's shares. But now, with the addition of a Neon, they also have the right of first refusal. If negotiations fail, they'll have to bid for the shares, or acquire the remaining 20% based on their existing shareholding ratio. While Tony's chances of maintaining a majority stake are high, if that damned Neon maliciously drives up the price, he'll have to spend even more money. Do you know what the original weapons manufactured by Stark Industries were used for? Tony's mouth is as sharp as his brain, as Pepper Potts can attest. Use it on Midway, on Guam, on Iwo Jima, on Okinawa, and even in Tokyo. Lin Hao's face was expressionless. What business did this have of his? If he could go back in time, he would surely install explosive rocks throughout the Oriental Islands, letting the weapons devised by the Japanese witness the sinking of Japan. Tony tried to provoke him, but he was so well-mannered that he didn't react at all. It was like hitting cotton. As a new shareholder of the company, I would like to conduct an audit of the company's assets to ensure my own interests, Lin Hao asked with a smile. Mr. Stark, you don't object, do you? Yes, it's your right. Tony didn't hide his displeasure, and said with a hint of sarcasm, if you want to check the accounts, I can have the accountant send them over, except for those involving American state secrets. I'm not interested in past accounts. Mr. Stark will probably not continue to lead the weapons manufacturing department. Without you, a genius, Stark Industries will have no competitiveness in the arms industry. Past accounts are meaningless. Lin Hao smiled and shook his head. Seeing the other party's calmness, Tony couldn't help but wonder, if this guy knows Stark Industries' prospects are bleak, why is he still buying up so many shares? As if seeing through his thoughts, Lin Hao confessed again, I've got my eye on the arc reactor. His gaze flicked across Tony's chest, and Lin Hao smiled. I still own some shares of Osborne Power. You should understand what I mean, right? Tony suddenly realized, unable to conceal his shock. You're actually thinking of getting involved in the American power industry? After Tony Stark decided to close his weapons manufacturing division, he had already decided on a strategic shift, using the replicable and even miniaturized arc reactor to enter the energy sector, a market even larger than arms. The arc reactor is the Marvel equivalent of a cold nuclear reactor, safe, efficient, and low cost. It offers numerous advantages over traditional energy sources. Compared to this, Osborne Power's biomass power generation technology looks like an elementary school art project. But isn't the energy sector accessible to just anyone? Stark Industries relies on the network of contacts it has cultivated over the years to secure a small slice of the pie from traditional energy giants, and even then, it still has to share a portion of the profits. A mere Japanese dares to get involved in America's electricity supply? Mr. Stark, if you're willing to cooperate, we can jointly launch a merger and acquisition of Osborne Power and establish a new company. Haha, Tony couldn't help but laugh. Do you know what you're talking about? How could the government and the consortium allow a Japanese to get involved in the power industry? That's why I need your help, Lin Hao confessed. Sorry, I'm American. Tony suddenly thought of a good way to expel Ichigo Kurosaki. As soon as he officially entered the energy sector, the government would undoubtedly review Stark Industries' capital structure. If they discovered that a Japanese owned more than a third of the shares, Tony wouldn't have to do anything. There would be plenty of people who would kill this ignorant guy and seize his shares. Lin Hao simply smiled. If you change your mind, feel free to come see me. With that, he left the conference room and followed a waiting administrative director outside to begin a tour of Stark Industries' assets. He briefly glanced at other areas, lingering only for a dozen seconds before Howard Stark's model of a future city. That night, the model mysteriously combusted, completely consuming it. Chapter 41 Girls are not fun at all. Queens, 20 Ingram Street. At 7 o'clock in the morning, 8-year-old Peter Parker, already dressed and carrying his school bag, excitedly rushed into Aunt May's room. Aunt May, you should get up and make dinner, or I'll be late. Peter, your school is just 1 block from our house, and it starts at 9. It's only now. The fiery young Aunt May glanced at the alarm clock by her bed, which was still a long time from going off, her face grumpily waking up. It's only 7, Peter Parker grinned. Ned said there's a transfer student coming to our class today, and I'm inviting him to join our Ram Street superhero squad. Your superhero squad only has 2 people, and Ned only agreed to join after you paid him 3 hot dogs." The rising young woman ruthlessly exposed her nephew's true colors. Morning light streamed into the bedroom, enveloping Aunt May's graceful figure. Her face was beautiful, and her branches were laden with fruit. Young Peter, unaware of the situation, excitedly recounted his grand superhero plan. "I'm sure he'll be impressed by my vision and join me. I'll build them armor, just like Iron Man." After the emergence of Iron Man and Red Blade, each garnered its own fan base. Young children, in particular, find a living superhero far more appealing than the cartoon version of Superman. However, Tony Stark and Adam Smith fan bases were somewhat distinct. Adam shot to fame at the press conference, becoming a hero for underprivileged men and a symbol of justice for American men. As a billionaire and playboy, Tony Stark was already popular with women, but now, with men and women arguing online, seeing so many loser men embracing Red Blade, these women are flocking to Iron Man's side. It's not that we women aren't faithful in marriage, it's that you losers are incompetent. If you were as rich as Tony Stark, we'd promise to be faithful. Children don't understand or care about the adult world. The difference in their attitudes towards the two is quite childish. Academically gifted kids, like Peter Parker, adore Iron Man because they imagine growing up to be able to build a technologically advanced suit like Tony Stark and become a superhero. Less academically gifted kids don't give it much thought, they simply cosplay whoever looks cool or has the most accessible props. Listening to her nephew's incessant chatter, Aunt May, having just changed her clothes, shook her head and asked with a smile, "How do you know the new classmate is definitely a boy? What if it's a girl?" Peter's machine gun-like mouth suddenly snapped like a goose being strangled. Stunned, he refused to believe it. "No, it's definitely a boy." "Well, congratulations in advance on finding a new playmate." Aunt May patted her nephew's cheek, gave him a kiss, and headed for the kitchen. "Not a playmate, but a member of the superhero team," Peter insisted, trudging after him on his short legs. Okay, superhero." After breakfast, Aunt May dropped Peter off at the elementary school a block away. Seeing her nephew enter the schoolyard, she turned back and went home to catch up on some sleep. Peter Parker, arriving early, noticed a blonde girl in the empty classroom. She wore a pristine white top, a black skirt, and brown leather shoes with pink socks emblazoned with cartoon patterns. There was no cliched love at first sight. The naive Peter simply glanced and looked away. Girls are so troublesome. A single fall can make them cry for ages. It's no fun at all. "Hey, Peter," his friend and confidant, Ned Leeds, walked into the classroom, looking tired and yawning. He wouldn't have come so early if Peter hadn't promised him a deluxe hot dog after school. Peter Parker, realizing what was happening, glanced back at the girl at the back of the room, his face etched with gloom. "Ned, I have some bad news for you," Peter said solemnly. "Your deluxe hot dog is gone." "What?" Ned Leeds' sleepiness instantly vanished. He strode forward, draped his chubby hands on Peter's shoulders, and shook him vigorously, gnashing his teeth. "What did you say?" Peter, with a look of despair on his face, ignored his best friend's wrath and muttered unconsciously, Why is the new student a girl? Do you have a problem with girls?" Gwen Stacy suddenly appeared behind Peter Parker. Ned Leeds blinked in his rage. He wasn't old enough to understand things, and even as an adult, he still believed in the single-man belief that a girlfriend wasn't as fun as a figurine. He was simply puzzled. "Who are you? Why are you in our classroom?" "She's our new classmate, the transfer student arriving today." Peter emphasized the word she. Peter, clever, had already guessed the identity of the girl who had suddenly appeared in the classroom. Gwen stared at Peter. The perceptive girl could sense the brat's dislike for her, even though she'd only just arrived. "It seems this school has a history of bullying new students. I need to report this to the principal." No. Peter was just joking. The second grader hadn't grown up enough to fear the teacher, but now, upon hearing Gwen bring up the principal, who is even more powerful than the teacher, the uninformed child immediately gave in. He's upset because the Ram Street superhero team lost their chance to recruit new members. "Superhero team?" Gwen asked curiously. "Superheroes like Iron Man and the Red Swordsman?" "Obviously not, just Peter," Ned was about to explain, but Peter interrupted. "Yeah, like Iron Man." "Wait until I get to college," Peter thought for a moment, then firmly changed his tone. "No, we'll be able to build armor for our team members when we're in high school. Now's just the training phase, then your training period is quite long." Gwen chuckled. "Who said that?" Although Peter didn't like playing with girls, he couldn't stand being looked down upon. He immediately defended himself. I just don't have the Iron Man suit to use as a reference. Otherwise, I could have made one before I graduated from high school, or even middle school, well, elementary school. Well, you should inherit Tony Stark's reputation as a genius, Gwen joked. I think so, Peter said with a cocky look on his face. Are you still short of people for your superhero team? Gwen suddenly asked. What? Peter was bewildered. If you're still short of people, maybe I can join, Gwen smiled. Peter Parker stared at Gwen Stacy, bathed in the sunlight, her golden hair dancing in the morning light, and was stunned for a moment. This girl seemed different from the girls in kindergarten. What? Gwen frowned slightly. You're not welcome. Welcome, of course. Peter burst into laughter, excited. Haha, our Iron Ranger team has one more member. I don't want to be the Tin Man. I prefer the Red Swordsman. He's much cooler than Iron Man. Gwen immediately made her stance clear. No, the Iron Man armor is the coolest. Peter stood firm. The Red Swordsman pierced Ironmonger's thick armor, which means this sword is more powerful. Gwen dropped her ladylike pretense and loudly insisted. Iron Man is the best. The Red Swordsman can defeat Ironmonger even without the Iron Man armor. What can Tony Stark do without the armor? How can I not have the armor? If it were me, I'd eat and sleep in it every day. Oh? Even poop in it. I can just cut a hole in my butt. Thus began the story of the stubborn eldest brother, the cunning little sister, and the lazy second brother. It seemed they were still lacking a master, preferably one with unwavering ambition and a willingness to sacrifice anything for his life. Sheriff George, who was driving to the new police station to take up his post, suddenly felt a chill down there. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42, Big Blonde Waves. These are the 4 characteristics. At night, on the streets of Brooklyn, a man with a crazed look ran frantically, knocking down passers-by. He clutched a briefcase to his chest in his left hand, a pistol in his right. He looked back every few steps, his frenzy barely concealing a deep fear. At the intersection, a man in red emerged. Wow, the Red Swordsman, the men on the street exclaimed in surprise. The women, however, had mixed feelings. Some sympathized with Adam Smith's fate, some were infuriated by his deprivation of women's freedom, others simply thought he looked attractive and was a celebrity, and so they wanted to attack him. This was perfectly normal. 3 women could create a scene, a girl's dorm could generate a dozen. A fleeing man heard the noise, turned his head, and immediately raised his pistol and fired wildly in the back. The red figure flashed, the sword flashed, and the sharp blade split the bullet head with ease. The sword in Adam Smith's hand still resembled a Han Dynasty sword, but its material was a world away. Hydra had used its adamantium reserves to create a custom-made sword for him. This massive sword was far stronger than his 2 previous swords. Not only was it tougher, but once sharpened, the adamantium blade razor sharp, capable of slicing through iron like mud without even needing internal energy. Adam was delighted with his sword. If he were to encounter Ironmonger again, he could easily disembowel him with a single blow. The bullet fragmented and landed at Adam Smith's feet, causing the onlookers to gasp in amazement. Oh my god. The Red Swordsman is truly the ultimate superhero. Captain America is a far cry from him. This was clearly a Hydra tactical scheme, a highly targeted one. However, in the eyes of ordinary citizens, Captain America's story was over 60 years old, and they preferred to believe what they saw with their own eyes. Get out of my way. Adam Smith had no desire to be a good neighbor to New Yorkers. His attitude remained icy. But Americans often mistake this coldness for aloofness, and many are even more susceptible to it. If you speak to them nicely, they'll simply ignore you. Bullets were completely ineffective against the red figure. The drug-addled robber emptied his magazine, but could only watch helplessly as the Red Swordsman strolled toward him, slicing off his gun in several fingers. To maintain his public image, Adam Smith deliberately held back, rarely cutting off arms or legs, preferring to knock criminals unconscious after destroying their weapons. As soon as he completed his routine, Hydra agents would immediately clean up the mess and call the police, followed by a swarm of reporters taking photos and interviewing him. Adam Smith surrendered to New York police at the press conference. but was released on bail after completing the formalities. Since then, under Hydra's direction, he has been busting gangs and rescuing the young and the old, each time catching the camera and appearing on prime time. It's clear to anyone with a discerning eye that Adam Smith has a powerful backing. So, today, a stubborn female reporter rushed to the front, thrusting her recorder to his lips. Mr. Smith, I have to admit, it's incredibly difficult to break through the barriers of my peers to interview you. With her long, wavy blonde hair, she had 4 features that completely hit Adam Smith's sore spots, and she was incredibly hot and sexy. Adam's expression immediately darkened, his gaze tinged with danger. The female reporter, assuming her sharp words had stung him, gloated complacently and introduced herself. I'm Christine, a reporter for Vanity Fair. Can I ask you 2 questions? Adam Smith, with his wavy blonde hair, had already figured out how to handle her, and he raised his voice. Sure, Mr. Smith, I've noticed that every time you do something good, you're always caught in the right spot by reporters. Don't you think that's a bit of a coincidence? Christine held the recorder closer. Unfortunately, I paid them to work overtime, Adam Smith said calmly. Everyone should abide by the contract, right? This blunt truth left Christine speechless for a moment, her prepared remarks completely undone. How could this happen? Unconventional. Well, it seems you admit to deliberately creating a news story, Christine said, blatantly setting the trap. Unfortunately, Adam Smith didn't care, he was only focused on the wavy blonde hair before him. Superhero stories deserve widespread publicity, so I'd like to ask Miss Christine to work overtime too. We can discuss this in detail elsewhere. Christine, caught in this fiery gaze, smiled with triumph. Do you think taking good photos is enough to win a Pulitzer Prize? It takes dedication. The scene shifted to show Christine embracing Adam Smith in the hotel suite, nibbling him passionately. Adam Smith fought back the nausea with saliva on his skin. He didn't kick the woman away, but remained calm, seemingly waiting. Christine, on top, finished sucking on her, then quickly unbuckled Adam Smith's belt and pulled it down. First shocked, then stunned. Adam Smith smiled smugly. Why did he become a superhero? To become famous and attract these coquettish women. When their enthusiasm overreached, they suddenly saw the empty gun mount. The mere thought of their expressions of shock, anger, and despair made him tremble with excitement. Well, Adam Smith smiled cruelly. Are you surprised? Disappointed, he pushed Christine to the carpet and walked over to the toolbox. Just as Adam Smith was about to begin his violent assault, Christine's eyes blazed at him. Oh my God, that's great. You know what? You're satisfying both of my needs at once. Come on. Hurry up. This time, it was Adam Smith's turn to be speechless. Unpredictable play. Furious, Adam Smith unleashed his fury on Christine, using all sorts of props. He exhausted himself, while Christine remained distracted. Adam admitted that this time, he'd made a mistake. He'd thought his ex-wife was perverted enough, but he hadn't expected there were even more perverted women in this country. Late at night, the Hydra cleanup crew, waiting outside, rushed in with a stretcher. The scene was as bloody as they'd expected, but the woman's reaction was unexpected. Though covered in wounds and bleeding, Christine's eyes were blurry, her cheeks flushed, and she kept muttering, "Oh my God. He's so good, so powerful." To attract more women, Adam Smith refrained from killing her, but the agonizing wails he'd imagined never materialized. Damn it. I just can't believe there aren't any normal women in America, Adam continued. Outside the hotel, a paparazzi secretly filmed Christine being loaded into an ambulance and bribed the paramedics to record her mumbling. The internet erupted in excitement. Damn bitch, I don't believe he's that powerful, bastard. I must fight him one-on-one and restore the reputation of American women. Adam Smith never expected that his already bad reputation among women would develop strangely because of this incident. Of course, he didn't reject it. The more women who pounced on him, the more he would ravage. But he didn't know that in addition to men and women paying attention to him, there were also his own kind paying attention to him. An underground fighting ring in Atlanta was littered with corpses and blood. The bald man in red looked at the news interrupted on the TV screen and showed a ferocious smile. Master Dongfang can only be mine. I talked with the editor about the plot of the next few chapters, and finally found that I was still conservative, so I changed it to something more exciting. Chapter 43. 3 days later, at the top of the White House, the winner will be decided, as will life and death. A bald man in a red hooded robe stepped off a train in New York. He hailed from Atlanta, nestled high in the Appalachian Mountains. A gourd filled with baijiu hung from his waist, his left hand clenched loosely, as if he couldn't get used to the lack of something. The bald man was pale and beardless, his once strong muscles gradually atrophying, but concentration was the essence. Having shed the flab, he felt a surge of strength. His tall stature and broad frame prevented him from projecting a hint of charm, instead conjuring a more youthful, fair-faced demeanor. If it weren't for the tattoo on his head and the hideous scar running between his eyebrows, he'd surely have been courted by many wealthy women. But now, he's completely indifferent to women. His heart holds only one person, the powerful, mysterious, and beautiful Lord Dongfang Bubei. First, I need to get a good sword. The bald man glanced at Adam Smith, enjoying the spotlight on the station hall screen, and a bloodthirsty smile crossed his face. Although you showed up earlier, I'm Master Dongfang's most devoted disciple. After a quick glance, the bald man strode out of the station and headed straight for Chinatown. This bald man's name was Johnny Tyson, once an underground boxer in Atlanta, earning a meager commission by working his butt off. Don't assume that fighting in the underworld is lucrative just because underground fights rake in millions of dollars each night. Most of the commission goes to the organizers, and the clubs that provide the fighters then take a significant cut, leaving the boxers with a pittance. Of course, if you build a reputation and generate traffic, the organizers will offer higher commissions or even share a portion of the profits. But all of this comes at the cost of a limited lifespan. Few underground boxers reach a natural end of life, either dying in the ring or in a hospital bed. Even those who manage to retire often suffer from hidden injuries in their later years, spending most of their earnings on medical treatment. Johnny Tyson was a struggling young boxer. Every time he braved the ring, he'd only receive less money than he'd get at a $0 shop. After a serious injury, the club abandoned him, forcing him to rely on his last savings for medical treatment and a living. One night, he was penniless. He contemplated ending his suffering by jumping off a building, but a black videotape appeared on the floor of his apartment. Kaiang met Zhen on a starry night. From then on, his life, once devoid of color, was tinged with a vibrant red, and Johnny Tyson's life became meaningful. However, Kaiang couldn't tolerate Zhen's past. It was only after his surgery that Johnny Tyson discovered a man imitating Dongfang Bubei had appeared in New York. Jealousy kept Kaiang awake, determined to possess Zhen completely. The great Dongfang needed no second followers, and Johnny was determined to eliminate all men who had benefited from Dongfang Bubei's gifts. So he traveled from Atlanta to New York, training diligently for over 3 months. Through combat, he defeated the club's owner, a boxer he had a feud with, and the entire mafia that organized the underground boxing matches. Johnny Tyson was confident his skills were no less powerful than Adam Smith's. Combined with the fighting experience honed by years of underworld boxing, he was undoubtedly far superior to the down-at-heel office worker and the pathetic green-haired turtle. Having found a fine sword in Chinatown, the ruthless and taciturn Johnny Tyson immediately issued a challenge to Adam Smith. At night, he carved a message on the wall outside the Wall Street Stock Exchange building with the blade of his sword. 3 days from now, at the summit of the White House, both the winner and the loser will be decided, and life and death will be decided. The signature, "The sun rises in the east, and only I am unbeatable," was in Chinese. Apparently, Kaiang's feelings for Zhen were even stronger, and he had spent 3 months studying Chinese for Zhen's sake. At dawn, Wall Street was in turmoil, New York was in turmoil, and America was in an uproar. Lin Hao, the instigator, was momentarily stunned by the location of the showdown, then smiled sweetly. Interesting. Now the invincible East is famous across America, and the Cleansing House Brigade can finally be established. After a moment's thought, he called Sadako back and tossed her a sword forged from vibranium. Give it to Baldy Wang. He'd noticed Adam Smith's sword on the news the other day and suspected it was likely made of adamantium. The swords Johnny Tyson acquired on the market wouldn't withstand a few blows. These two eunuchs were both talented individuals in the Jingxi Fang, offering powerful advertising and promotional value. They couldn't be lost for now. If only Adam Smith appeared, most factions would assume it was a one-off, unrepeatable incident. Once they saw Johnny Tyson, they'd react and begin to investigate the underlying reasons. By then, the question of whether to circumcise or not would become a dilemma for many American men. In the face of increasingly dangerous living conditions, the willingness to undergo circumcision would undoubtedly increase. Early in the morning, in the office of the director of SYNOPSIS, Nick Fury sat behind his desk, flanked by Phil Coulson, reporting on their latest discoveries. This Japanese guy's name is Ichigo Kurosaki. He's acquired over a third of Stark Industries stock. He held a shareholder meeting with Tony Stark yesterday, but the details of the meeting are unclear. Nick Fury quickly looked up Ichigo Kurosaki's profile and discovered he was a perfectly normal Japanese businessman with years of experience running businesses. He also dabbled in finance, trading stocks with mixed profits and losses. This time, he took advantage of Stark Industries' fluctuating stock price to buy at a low price, thus becoming a major shareholder. Something's wrong. Nick Fury only needed a moment to spot the problem. If this latest tip was due to blind faith in Tony Stark, then his short-selling move 3 months ago was far too resolute. $5 million with tenfold leverage is certainly a bit risky, but he's made similar moves before, and even lost money several times. Coulson's attitude wasn't as certain as his boss's. Don't worry about his past actions, because they could be a perfect setup. Nick Fury, always in the mindset of an agent, remains skeptical. It depends on what he's doing and what he's trying to achieve. Okay, I'll keep an eye on him. Coulson immediately added Kurosaki Ichigo to his priority surveillance list on his tablet, then reported, Adam Smith, the Red Swordsman, has been particularly active lately. Surveillance footage and news reports from various TV stations began playing on the screen. Boss, this guy's no ordinary guy. I've checked the backgrounds and recent transactions of those reporters, and I can't find anything suspicious. The fact that Coulson couldn't find anything suspicious was inherently suspicious. No need to check. He's Pierce's man, Nick Fury revealed directly. Pierce is trying to create a superhero team, that, Coulson pondered carefully, finally stating his position. He's no longer director, and it doesn't seem he has the power to do that. He doesn't have the power of SHIELD, but he does have the power that comes with wealth. Nick Fury was quite open-minded about these matters. He himself used funds allocated by the Security Council to covertly maintain a Skrull's survival in exchange for their assistance in intelligence work. Besides, Alexander Pierce is still a senior member of the Security Council. If he could convince the Council to establish a special operations team independent of SHIELD, many would likely agree. Nick Fury has maintained a tight grip on SHIELD since taking power, and some have long resented him, though he's unaware that his control is in vain. SHIELD has long become a den of snakes. Coulson finished his morning briefing and left the director's office. The tablet was still showing footage of Adam Smith beheading an armed robber. As expected of Pierce, his plan is very similar to mine, Nick Fury muttered to himself. A moment later, the office door was violently flung open. Phil Coulson's face was filled with panic. Director, something's wrong. Seeing the 2 lines of text on the live footage, Nick Fury's face darkened. Damn it. He's provoking America. He'd wanted to fight atop the Statue of Liberty, but the boss said the White House was fine, just don't expose Comrade Guan He. So, brothers, be careful not to mention it in your comments. P.S. So far, I haven't deleted a single comment. Some friends found that the comments disappeared, not because of me, but because I am protecting this book. I implore my brothers to be more tactful in the future and use more pseudonyms. I sincerely thank Penglay for giving me the opportunity and such kindness. In the future, I will strive to improve my driving skills and ask you for less help with revisions. Chapter 44, Unix, Assemble. 2 lines of words appeared on the exterior wall of the Wall Street Stock Exchange, setting America ablaze. Who did this? Who was he trying to challenge for victory, a life or death battle? And why were they in Chinese? Many American students are constantly asking online, what do these 2 sentences mean? Could someone translate them? It means that in 3 days, the person who wrote this sentence will fight someone on the roof of the White House, a duel like in the ancient Greek Colosseum. What is ancient Greece? Ancient Greece isn't a thing, it's a country in history. Oh, I'm not interested in history. Is the person upstairs an idiot? Now they should be more concerned about the location of the showdown. That's the White House. Yeah, we have to go there early to grab a good spot. Remember to bring a tent. Last time, my girlfriend and I didn't bring a tent, and the police arrested us for being an eyesore. We specialize in selling tents, protest flags, and uniforms with slogans in the Washington area. Custom designs and patterns are available. Quantities are limited, so hurry and buy now. I've already bought a ticket to Washington. I hope they don't cancel, or I'll kick their asses. Idiot, you can do that. The internet was filled with joy, as if they were about to go on a summer trip. Most people didn't care who was about to fight to the death, they just hoped both sides would stick together so they could join in the fun. But America's top brass felt insulted. No one had ever dared to humiliate them like this. Investigate, we must find out who this person is. Thus, the CIA, the Special Warning Bureau, the New York Police Department, and even SHIELD were ordered to investigate. Nick Fury, and indeed the entire SHIELD, ignored the fact that the organization was now affiliated with the World Security Council, still clinging to the traditions of the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Agency. It was clear which country's territory Homeland was. Even Hydra, hiding within SHIELD, did not want to see America's prestige damaged, as they considered America the private property. Once Operation Insight was implemented, America, and indeed the entire world, would be theirs. Director, the surveillance footage didn't capture anyone. Slowing down the footage only reveals a blurry red. Carlson was busy gathering intelligence. He absolutely could not tolerate such behavior, which was destroying his beloved America. Street surveillance cameras don't have high resolution, so they can't capture fast-moving targets, but this situation strongly resembles a person. Carlson's gaze sharpened. Adam Smith. Nick Fury pondered for a moment, then decisively ordered, "Phil, take a team and find him." These two sentences may not have been written by him, but they're definitely related to him. He added, "I'll contact Pierce." Since the director was willing to cover the consequences, Carlson had no objections. Even if the director didn't show up, he would go himself. Because Carlson had long been committed to protecting the America he loved. Others might be surprised and speculate about the two sentences on the outer wall of the Wall Street Stock Exchange, but the father-in-laws created by Azhan were enlightened by the second sentence as the signature. They had only seen these words on the black tape, never before seen online. After seeing the news, Adam Smith's face darkened. He knew the person who wrote these two sentences was coming for him, because the stock exchange was where he first appeared. "Adam, the SHIELD people are coming soon, but don't worry, they're just," Alexander Pierce was explaining on the phone. "It's me," Adam interrupted coldly. "But weren't you with a woman in the hotel last night?" Pierce was puzzled. Adam Smith didn't mind Hydra knowing his location. After all, if he wanted to leave, no one could stop him. Isn't it good to have someone to serve and clean up a mess anytime, anywhere? "He's throwing a challenge to me." Adam Smith smiled at first, then said proudly, "I accept this challenge. I will prove to the whole world that I am the strongest." He secretly swore, "Come on, let's show the Eastern Lord who is his only follower." Alexander Pierce fell silent. Although it wasn't Adam Smith who wrote those two words on the stock exchange that shocked the nation, judging by his current behavior, he clearly intended to accept the invitation. That's the White House. Pierce was overwhelmed. How should this matter be resolved? However, he was a professional politician after all, and he quickly thought of a way to turn waste into treasure. "Okay, I'll start the publicity immediately. You must intervene to stop this crazy guy." Whatever, Adam Smith didn't care. He would definitely attend the appointment and start the fight. How the media portrayed it was none of his business. Americans quickly learned that the Red Swordsman would intervene to stop the thugs who challenged federal authority, and his fanbase skyrocketed. Of course, some were slow to react, and some online rants erupted. "Get out. We want rivers of blood, go back to your shell, you damned sissy. Washington doesn't need your protection, dare to come to Washington, I'll piss you to death, you idiots." Don't you think this declaration of war is aimed at him? The Red Swordsman's involvement further fueled the wave of public opinion, adding fuel to the fire. Now even those in remote areas, those who didn't even pay attention to the news, knew about the impending decisive battle at the White House. Johnny Tyson, driving to Washington, was delighted to see Adam Smith's response. He had woken up with a sword at his side. This ability to move so swiftly that only the Eastern Master could possess proved that he had earned the Master's approval. As expected, he was the Eastern Master's only follower. The other voluptuous bitches would eventually meet their end at his hands. Besides Baldy Wang, Sheriff George of Queens suddenly requested a few days' leave from the department. He had come to believe that the words carved into the wall of the stock exchange were meant specifically for him by Adam Smith. Unaware of the numerous locations the Sadako videotape had visited over 3 months, George Stacy had assumed that only he and Adam Smith had cruelly cut it. Now that the other party had deliberately carved the words in the same spot where they had fought, It was clear they had discovered a fellow officer and were determined to eliminate him. Given this, Sheriff George had no choice but to resort to self-inflicted wounds to seek justice for his fellow officer. Even with only a short period of martial arts training, he wouldn't back down. His only concern was his daughter. This troubled Sheriff George for 2 days. Late at night before the appointed time, George finally made up his mind to leave. He kissed his sleeping daughter on the forehead and resolutely headed for the garage. But as soon as he left, Gwen Stacy jumped out of bed, completely clothed. Gwen carefully slipped through the window to the garage, hiding in the trunk while her father opened the door. I wonder if Peter and Ned can come up with a plan. Maybe I'll be the only team member who can watch the fight live, Gwen chuckled at the thought. Though no names were mentioned, it wasn't just Adam Smith and George Stacy who believed they were involved. Many of the eunuchs Sadako had created over the past 3 months believed they were being challenged to fight, and they flocked to Washington from all over America. Lin Hao hadn't anticipated so many eunuchs responding spontaneously. Suddenly, the cleansing room team erupted in a thriving, vibrant atmosphere. Seeing this spectacle, Lin Hao resolved to do his part to ensure the smooth conduct of this life-or-death battle. This mattered to the success of both the East and West American factories. Chapter 45 Ancient One, Mr. Lin, you are too dangerous. The day of the battle soon arrived. A large number of tourists flocked to Washington, not just Americans but also many international tourists eager to witness the fall of the White House. Since the exact time was not specified, many onlookers arrived in the early morning hours, hoping to secure a good spot. However, they underestimated the seriousness with which the American leadership took the matter. The White House was completely surrounded by troops within a kilometer. The outermost streets were blocked by military checkpoints, forbidding anyone from passing. Searchlights hung from heavily guarded sentries, and large-caliber machine guns were atop corner towers. Tanks stood ready in the rear, and attack helicopters circled overhead. The area near the White House was jointly defended by the CIA, the FWS, SHIELD, and the Secret Service. While their heavy weaponry was inferior to that of the military outside, their portable light weapons were more advanced. The men in the White House were naturally concerned about the armored forces getting too close. What if some impulsive idiot decided to turn their guns on the White House? After all, this was a magical country where tanks could be used to drive out veterans demanding their wages. With the current level of defense, Nick Fury believed that even Tony Stark in armor wouldn't be able to charge head-on. Perhaps only the Hulk could do it, and of course, his powerful outside helpers could also do the same. Adam Smith, personally escorted to the White House by Alexander Pierce, saw this scene with a grim expression. He didn't really care where the final battle took place, but he wanted to prove himself and kill that damn guy himself. What if that guy got scared in this situation? It's unclear if Johnny Tyson was afraid, but George Stacy was stunned. Sheriff George, newly minted, had limited skills. He had to work patrols during the week and only practiced swordplay at night. With his current strength, he definitely couldn't break in. Gwen, secretly following her father and hiding in the crowd, was also anxious. If she couldn't get in and couldn't see, how could she show off to her friends when she got back? As the sky grew brighter, more and more tourists gathered around the White House, shouting in various languages. Go back to the barracks, you scoundrels, we want to see rivers of blood, you're restricting people's freedoms, you're violating the federal constitution, get out. Washington doesn't need you, shouts echoed, yet the American troops behind the lines remained unmoved. They were accustomed to such scenes. With the exception of Victory Day after World War II, this army had never enjoyed a warm welcome from the people. With guns and cannons pointed at the people, no one dared more than shout and throw trivial garbage from 100 meters away. Americans, though stubborn, were not foolish. They dared to act impulsively in the face of the police, even throwing Molotov cocktails during riots. But facing a heavy-handed military attack, they only dared to shout. They knew the military would actually dare to open fire. The crowds on all sides were mingled with fathers-in-law who had rushed in from all over. Faced with such a tight defense, some hesitated, while others eagerly tried. Those who dared to strike a blow were inherently fierce. Even long-term practice of the exorcist sword technique can intensify paranoia and even madness. Those with less advanced skills might not dare, but the eunuchs, who had practiced swordsmanship for over a tenth of a year, were eager to give it a try. Unnoticed, a stealth-capped plane hovered overhead, Lin Hao waiting inside. As the afternoon approached, The audience had filled up, and the eunuchs had already entered. Lin Hao was about to escort the plane. Suddenly, the surrounding space flipped like a mirror, dragging the entire plane into another dimension. Lin Hao's face darkened. He pushed open the plane door, revealing a suspended clearing within a shattered, mirror-like space. There, waiting, stood a bald old nun in a strangely mismatched monk's robe. Mr. Lin, hello, Ancient One said with a slight nod, a greeting. Undeterred, Lin Hao raised his azure dragon crescent blade, took the moon step, and leaped onto the clearing. Mr. Lin, Zheng Xian founded SHIELD to protect humanity from alien invasions. SHIELD are one family. Why? Ha? Lin Hao laughed in anger, demanding, when Nick Fury massacred my SHIELD colleagues at the end of last year, why didn't you stand up and tell him that SHIELD were one family? The Ancient One was speechless, sighing softly. Conflict between nations is inevitable. Kamar Taj and SHIELD are organizations working behind the scenes to protect all of human civilization. Bullshit, Lin Hao roared, slamming his azure dragon crescent blade into the open air, a powerful aura of dominance pouring down. The Ancient One frowned slightly, but showed no discomfort. This old nun had lived for centuries, constantly drawing on the power of the dark dimension. Combined with her mastery of the magic of the Trinity Vishanti, her spiritual power had long since transcended the mundane. You keep talking about human civilization. If you really cared about it, you would have let Earth into space long ago. In a few hundred years, we'd be on par with the Kree Empire, if not Xander. You've seen so many civilizations and witnessed different timelines. Don't you know that all conflicts among humans are caused by resources? Humanity isn't prepared to venture into space. A reckless incursion will only bring destruction to humanity. The old nun's good temper was limited, and she would turn her face up when scolded. Aren't there a few aliens who have visited Earth over the past thousands of years? Lin Hao sneered. We just let them treat Earth as a battlefield. All we have to do is drive them away. You deserve to have your own people suffer every time. The Ancient One frowned, looked Lin Hao in the eye, and said gravely, your ideas are too dangerous, talk is useless. Show us your strength. Lin Hao wrapped his conqueror's haki around his sword. Purple-red lightning suddenly converged, and the power of the tremor fruit created a ball of white light on the blade. He swung his sword at Ancient One, the shockwaves spreading first, shattering the surrounding lenses. Purple-red lightning, attached to a streak of black blade light, flew towards Ancient One. Ancient One slashed with his hands, and layers of golden shields floated before him. The black blade slashed down, shattering the golden shields into flying gold flakes that vanished in an instant. After striking again, Lin Hao rushed forward, attempting a close encounter with Ancient One. The broadsword, like a delicate willow, twisted effortlessly in Lin Hao's grasp, and another strike, at a tricky angle, pierced the lessened shield. As the blade struck, a golden foothold appeared beneath Ancient One's feet, leveraging the momentum to leap upward. With a swipe of her hands, a red ribbon of runes appeared, which she swung towards the broadsword. The azure dragon crescent blade was bound by Sitorak's red band, and Lin Hao was momentarily unable to break free. He decisively dropped the blade and raised his fists. A layer of black enveloped his arms, and purple-red lightning coiled around them. Fists imbued with armament haki pounded the golden shield, destroying it layer by layer like peeling an onion, rapidly closing in on Ancient One. Unexpectedly, Lin Hao, having discarded his weapon, proved even more formidable. He drew a circle with his left hand, opening a spatial portal. A golden Vishanti sword materialized in his right hand, and he thrust it directly into the portal. On the other side of the portal was the back of Lin Hao's head. With a frantic warning from his observation haki, Lin Hao, precognizing fragments of the future, spun abruptly, grasping the Vishanti sword with his left hand. With his right hand, he ventured through the spatial portal, flinging the white gas he had been holding loosely through it. He then withdrew his hand with all his might, avoiding being cut through by the space. Lin Hao's foresight and frantic actions overwhelmed Ancient One. By the time she saw the incoming gas, it was too late to defend herself. The gas exploded with a bang. Anticipating this, Lin Hao shielded his head with his arms and retreated. Having endured a blast, Ancient One lost her composure. Chapter 46, Daddy is going to suffer, she is anxious. In the mirror dimension, on a floating clearing, the bald old nun's robe was stained with blood. Lin Hao admitted it was his doing. After quickly gaining some distance, Lin Hao braced himself and didn't rush in rashly. He also wanted to take advantage of the situation, but his instincts told him the bald old nun wasn't that easy. In the movie, she'd been ambushed, stabbed, and then plunged to her death. It seemed like a joke. Was she worthy of her status as a powerful being in a single universe? Seeing that Lin Hao hadn't fallen for it, Ancient One, slightly disappointed, quickly enveloped his body with the power of the dark dimension, and the wounds vanished at a visible speed. Haha, that's right, Lin Hao sneered. You're too dangerous. Ancient One stared at Lin Hao and reiterated his point. Possessing your SHIELD will only bring disaster to Earth and humanity, disaster to your American father, right? Lin Hao ruthlessly exposed her, demanding, you should know what nationality the Ancient One in the other universe is from, right? I'm from Earth, the Sorcerer Supreme. Ancient One emphasized his identity with a stern face. Protecting Earth and protecting humanity from other dimensions is my duty. Wow, I didn't expect you to be such a great internationalist, Lin Hao retorted with a pompous expression, but don't you know that true internationalists were destroyed by your fathers 100 years ago? Since you've elevated your position above all of humanity, why are you standing up to me today? Am I not from Earth? Haven't you always stayed out of Earth's internal conflicts? Why? Just because the winner isn't your father, you're so upset. Aren't you ashamed to let the Ancient One from another universe see this? Faced with Lin Hao's taunts, the Ancient One was speechless. She had long been aware of Lin Hao, having watched him steadily expand the SHIE's foundation. She had originally adhered to the rules and not intervened, having seen nothing out of the ordinary from Lin Hao's timeline. Until this time, when she peered into the timeline and glimpsed a glimpse of the future, she was horrified and stepped in to stop Lin Hao. Perhaps due to the little demon, Lin Hao's inner secrets were obscured, preventing the Ancient One from seeing his cause and effect for years. It wasn't until the outbreak of this decisive battle, with America potentially heading for a dangerous future, that the old nun finally glimpsed a glimpse of the future. Mr. Lin Hao, since you prefer other universes, why don't I send you there? The Ancient One resolved. For his father and his own values, the Ancient One didn't mind breaking the Sorcerer Supreme's code of conduct. This bald old nun even dared to draw on the power of the dark dimension to prolong her life, demonstrating her willingness to do whatever it took to achieve her goals. Her skin color and appearance betrayed her values, much like Nick Fury's. Earthlings simply had to stay on Earth. Even if they encountered alien invaders, superheroes like them and the Sorcerer Supreme would be there to fight them off. Success would allow them to enjoy the cheers and admiration of ordinary people. As for the innocent victims, that was the work of aliens. What did it have to do with us? The advanced technology and powerful magic at hand should only be used to enhance the protectors through passive defense, never to enhance humanity's overall strength through active offense. The outside world is too dangerous, not for you. After an incident, ordinary people should simply wait patiently for the arrival of a savior, not dwell on striving for strength. How relaxing, how comfortable. This is an irreconcilable contradiction in concepts. Upon hearing this, Lin Hao was awed, and immediately exercised extreme caution. The bald old nun was about to strike for real. At this moment, another golden aura suddenly appeared beside Lin Hao. Lin Hao, using his observation haki to foresee the future, was able to avoid moving out of the way. Zheng Xian led the way, followed by an elderly man in Taoist robes, his saber at his side. As the three emerged, the saber immediately tossed the spear of Imhotep to Lin Hao. Lin Hao took it, feeling reassured. The holy spear, originally golden simply due to its material, shone brightly in Lin Hao's hands, radiating a golden glow. Compared to the last time in Wakanda, the golden light emanating from the holy spear was even more intense. Seeing this golden light, Ancient One was perplexed and puzzled. How can he make the holy spear radiate such a strong divinity? Because Imhotep is an earthling. Zheng Xian, as if seeing through Ancient One's doubts, explained, unlike those alien gods you believe in, he is a true earthling, revered as a god by the world for his contributions in resisting alien invaders. Clearly, Imhotep's philosophy differs from your passive defensive thinking. His remaining consciousness favors Lin Hao's ideas, thus, Lin Hao is able to unleash the divinity of the holy spear. The bald old nun's face darkened. She glanced at the holy spear again, then carefully examined the unremarkable old Taoist priest behind Zheng Xian. She turned and walked into the newly opened golden circle of light. Lin Hao, clutching the holy spear, was filled with murderous intent. He looked at Zheng Xian. Boss, Let's chase them down and take down Kamartaj. Strip the old nun clean and send her to your room. How could Director Lin remain calm after being dragged into a trap? Zheng Xian glared at him. Although she's the weakest ancient one in the multiverse, there's no one in our universe to replace her. We'll have to rely on her to fend off the dimensional demons. Lin Hao glanced at the old Taoist priest behind him, his eyes full of meaning, his face a look of disbelief. It seemed that Director Zheng, like the Black Director, could summon external help at a moment's notice, and it might not even be from this universe. Those who play with time will be played with by time. Zheng Xian glared at Lin Hao. Our people don't have much magical talent, we can't compare to her. Zheng Xian teased Lin Hao for once. If you could learn magic, you could consider creating a new Kamartaj. Even if I didn't mention that, I still respect you as the boss. Lin Hao's expression immediately changed. This was undoubtedly the greatest setback Lin Hao had ever encountered since his rise to power. He had tried to learn the magic stored within the SHIE, but sadly, there was no reaction at all. Neither black nor white impressed him. Those dimensional demons were like stingy granite, unwilling to lend Lin Hao a single hair. The little girl you adopted 8 years ago has a strong magical talent. If you really want to build a new Kamartaj, she could take over the position of Sorcerer Supreme, Zheng Xian added, knowing that Lin Hao was a pushover. She's almost adulthood. I'll send her over to you then. Okay, I have a big show to rehearse. Send me back first. Lin Hao, clutching the holy spear, smiled. Let me borrow it for now. I'm afraid the old nun might come back. The higher-ups have said I'll keep it with you for now, Zheng Xian warned, not forgetting to say, don't lose it. The Spear Bureau had finally produced someone capable of harnessing the Holy Spear's divine power, so of course they had to make the most of it. Furthermore, Lin Hao possessed extraordinary power. With a Holy Spear in hand, even the Ancient One would be helpless. There was no need to worry about it being stolen. If Lin Hao threw the Holy Spear into the dimension opened by the imp, even Imhotep would be left utterly helpless. After a brief delay, Lin Hao reappeared above the White House. He retrieved the black videotape and inserted it into the player. Sadako, dressed in red, appeared. Come on, I'll take you to a show. With that, Lin Hao possessed Sadako. As the sun passed its zenith, countless tourists crowded the streets of Washington, shouting and clamoring. The American army stood in formation. Suddenly, a red figure appeared on the relatively empty street behind the crowd and walked toward the White House. A female Ancient One is quite disgusting to both fans and non-fans in China, hence the setting. Marvel wouldn't feature the powerful Chinese Ancient One from the comics in Doctor Strange, otherwise North America, their largest audience base, would likely reject it. Would that be a huge loss? Anyway, this Ancient One is just a tool for Strange to pass on his skills, so this is fine. Chapter 47, Eunuch Tai's Attack. He's coming. He's coming, is it him? He looks just like the Red Swordsman, so it must be him. So he's the one the Red Swordsman challenged. Idiot Japanese, it's clearly this guy who challenged the Red Swordsman. The previously boisterous crowd parted, revealing a passage. Johnny Tyson, sword slung at his waist, raised his gourd, tilted his head back, and gulped down a drink. His eyes focused solely on the white buildings in the distance, not caring about the tanks or helicopters. Tyson fought with such momentum. As the enemy approached, the American soldiers behind the defense line erupted in a commotion. He actually dared to come? Is he crazy? He doesn't think he can take on armored forces with just a sword. You're kidding? Shut up, everyone. Return to your positions. Only after the officer gave the order did the soldiers return to combat mode. When Eunuch Tai was 500 meters from the defense line, a voice blared over the loudspeaker. Johnny Tyson, leave immediately. We can pretend nothing happened, including your massacre of the Atlanta gang. The American higher-ranking officials had no idea it was Johnny Tyson who had written those 2 lines, but the moment he so brazenly approached was enough for several powerful agencies to search for his detailed information. The Red Swordsman alone had already demonstrated considerable value. If Johnny Tyson could be stopped before anything truly happened, the CIA, the FBI, SHIELD, and Hydra would all extend olive branches to him. Such a unique and powerful individual would be extremely valuable for both utilization and research. Up to this point, Hydra and Adam Smith had maintained a harmonious relationship. Although Alexander Pierce was eager to draw blood and even biopsy him, his rationale told him that maintaining the current relationship would yield greater benefits. So, He secretly had a few naturally shed hairs and a few fingernail clippings taken. Eunuch Tai ignored him, took a final sip of wine, tied the gourd around his waist, and placed his right hand on the hilt of his sword, his eyes gleaming fiercely. Fire. Soldiers were not in the habit of giving 3 warnings before firing. Had the officer not said the important person should speak first, they would have opened fire long ago. Bullets and machine guns unleashed a long stream of metal that ravaged the streets. Eunuch Tai dodged swiftly, his red robe swaying like a willow in the wind. He seemed weak, yet he was unable to control his movements. It wasn't that Eunuch Tai was faster than the machine guns or even the artillery shells, but rather that his reflexes were quicker than those of the gunners and gunners. The firepower at the scene couldn't cover the entire area, and with his vibranium sword as a backup, Eunuch Tai had room to dodge and maneuver. Seeing that direct fire would miss, the guns and cannons recklessly shifted their angles, sending limbs flying and blood flowing like a river to the tourists blocking the street. The survivors cried out in despair, fleeing in panic, their heads in their hands. Unsurprisingly, a stampede ensued, leaving the scene in utter chaos. Foreigners who had never witnessed the brutality of American soldiers, those brainwashed by Hollywood into believing America was a beacon of civilization, could hardly have imagined they would one day be greeted with such warmth and hospitality, a warmth that ignited their very souls. Dad, Gwen Stacy, who had been hiding in the crowd, trying to avoid her father, finally felt fear and cried out to Sheriff George, who stood a short distance ahead. George, possessing inner strength, suddenly heard a familiar voice amidst the chaos, and turned back, startled. Gwen. He had never expected Gwen to be there. The moment Sheriff George saw Johnny Tyson, he finally realized that he and Adam Smith were not the only ones who had seen Dongfang Bubei. This meant he had been deluding himself these past few days, the other party wasn't even challenging him to a duel. Realizing this, and seeing his daughter in danger, George abandoned any further concerns about a decisive battle and immediately parted the crowd, rushing towards his daughter, who was caught in the throng. By the time he could embrace his daughter, the panicked crowd had already swarmed into the buildings lining the street. Meanwhile, Eunuch Tai had already sprinted across the mere 500 meters and leapt into the defensive perimeter. However, what awaited him wasn't a one-sided massacre, but a carefully laid trap. The Americans weren't fools. Multiple departments had analyzed Adam Smith's attack patterns and reached a unanimous conclusion: ordinary combatants must absolutely not be allowed to engage in close combat. The battle that took place in front of the Wall Street Stock Exchange over 3 months earlier fully demonstrated this conclusion. At a distance, ordinary combatants could still inflict some damage with their weapons, but once drawn into close combat, it would be a one-sided massacre. Therefore, when setting up the defensive perimeter, the military had already considered the possibility of an enemy rushing in. To this end, a trench 200 meters wide and 50 meters deep had been dug behind the lines. The trench had been covered with camouflage cloth, and soldiers heading to their posts relied on metal plates to navigate across it. Seeing the red-clad figure cross the defensive perimeter, the commander immediately ordered, "Break." Eunuch Tai, suspended in midair, gazed at the dark trench below with a hint of surprise. The military and political personnel in the distance watched Johnny Tyson plummet into the trench, smug smiles plastered across their faces. Even the most ferocious beasts are no match for the cunning hunters. They were the hunters. Don't worry, everyone. We've pre-installed a high concentration of anesthetic gas down below. He can't possibly get up there again. The smug commander barely finished his words when a red figure leaped out. No. Impossible, the commander shuddered in disbelief. It's covered in special metal plates, not even a snake can crawl up. Clearly, they knew nothing of the Qingguang, lightning skills, inherited from Dongfang Bubei, let alone Eunuch Tai's vibranium sword, which he could use to leverage his power against the walls. Alexander Pierce hadn't shared with them the image of Adam Smith practicing swordsmanship in the forest, otherwise these men wouldn't have been so confident as to attempt to capture him alive. Instead, they would have seized upon Eunuch Tai's entry into the trench to wield powerful weapons and kill him. However, this time, it was Eunuch Tai's turn to let out a sinister grin. The red figure entered, sword flashing. Several heads flew up, blood showering the sky. Eunuch Tai ignored the enemy, charging solely towards the White House. Armored troops, block the street. Stop him. Tanks from behind started up one after another, filling the streets. A common enemy would have been left with no escape. Eunuch Tai took an unconventional approach, leaping high into the air, stepping on the top of the tank and leaping forward, even faster than on the road. His vibranium sword certainly struggled to penetrate the outer armor of a main battle tank, but Eunuch Tai's goal wasn't to destroy the armored troops, so why would he fight to the death? Inside the command tent near the White House, the heads of several departments grimaced. Their supposedly impenetrable defenses had been breached by a single individual. The best way to deal with a superpowered person is another superpowered person. Nick Fury, having witnessed Big Mom Marvel, understood this truth years ago, which explains his unwavering commitment to the Avengers Initiative. Unlike the bureaucrats around him who hadn't opened their eyes to the universe, Nick Fury had long witnessed the powerful individual life forms of the universe and understood the ineffectiveness of humanity's current military against a formidable foe. It's not that American soldiers are useless, but they can't leverage their collective strengths against powerful individuals, because the enemy won't just stand there and endure saturation fire. Damn it, are we just going to leave the safety of the White House to that sissy? These real men felt ashamed. Oh no, the monitoring personnel in front of the screen suddenly shouted, enemy wearing red clothes have appeared in other directions. Department heads, including Nick Fury, rushed to the screen, their faces changed drastically. Unexpectedly, there were more than one enemy. Where did they come from? Similar clothing and attire? Are these guys an organization? This is difficult. One person is so difficult to deal with, and now, how about asking the gentleman to temporarily transfer in, please collect, red, and vote. Chapter 48, Call Upon Jehovah. New York, Stark Tower. Seeing the live footage on the news, Tony Stark couldn't sit still. He walked over to the newly constructed automated wearable platform. Are you really going? Pepper Potts scurried forward, hugging Tony, her face filled with worry. I don't like those politicians, but I'm an American, Tony Stark said solemnly. The White House is America's honor and pride. It must not be tarnished. This was a sense of identity only the American elite could possess. Uneducated farmhands couldn't possess such a sense of ownership. Perhaps the elite eagles had forgotten, or perhaps deliberately refused to remember, that the White Building was also newly built. The old one had long been burned down by the British. Okay, be careful. Pepper Potts gave him a long kiss. Tony Stark quickly changed into his new suit, jumped off the platform, started the engine, and flew at full speed towards Washington, over 300 kilometers away. It wasn't long before he arrived above the White House. Hey, men, why are you so mad? Tony landed right in front of the attacking Eunuch Tai, as he was now closest to the White House. Why don't we sit down and have a cheeseburger? Nick Fury, in the command tent, breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing Tony Stark arrive. If the Red Swordsman and Iron Man could join forces to take down Johnny Tyson first, and then deal with the other enemies, this incident could be resolved. A moment had passed, and the other enemies weren't advancing as aggressively as Johnny Tyson. Nick Fury keenly sensed the disparity in their strength. Not every enemy was as formidable as Johnny Tyson. Black Braised Egg had indeed guessed correctly. The eunuchs who had appeared later had seen Eunuch Tai's current popularity and didn't want him to outdo them. As a result, they had impulsively jumped out, despite having practiced for less than 1/10 of a year. Because the exorcism sword technique is a quick-learning martial art, the lack of practice reflected a noticeable difference in speed and power. If he rashly jumped out before practicing for 1/10 of a year, Nick Fury, that little scoundrel, would surely catch him by the horns. Boss, we've captured one alive, Coulson announced the good news to Nick Fury over the communicator. The little scoundrel was delighted, but kept a straight face. No one could see the change in his expression. Take him back. Lin Hao, observing the scene with his observation haki, finally waited until the impetuous little eunuch jumped out and was apprehended. Only then did he nod in satisfaction. Today's spectacle would not only make Dongfang Bubei famous, but also force the American brass to extract the secret from the little eunuch. By then, the American brass would undoubtedly organize a group of people to take action, with different departments establishing separate banzi, big teams, roughly equivalent to the Eastern Investigation Bureau. Later, Sadako would continue to expand the ranks of the civilian eunuchs, and Lin Hao would further fuel the fire, revealing the secrets of the Bixi Sword Manual to the nation. As the world became increasingly dangerous, the Western Investigation Bureau, which relied primarily on civilian eunuchs, was bound to flourish. As the East and West factories expanded across America and the number of eunuchs increased, Lin Hao turned to concocting another copy of the Rama internal skill, the eunuchs, missing them even more after their loss. were bound to engage in a martial arts battle, unleashing a bloody storm. The East and West factories had spread cholera throughout the country. Director Lin easily achieved what Cao Zheng Xian and Yuanchu hadn't managed. Seeing eunuch Tai entangled by Tony Stark and the other young eunuchs, who had only recently trained, struggling, Director Lin knew it was time to step in. The vast ocean laughs, the tide surges on both sides, floating and sinking with the waves. Remembering this day, the music suddenly filled the kilometer-wide area around the White House, the invisible aircraft turning on its speakers, playing its own background music. Who's singing? Any other masters? What do the lyrics mean? Nick Fury and other senior executives from various departments were visibly shaken. Today had been one turmoil after another. Just when things seemed to be calming down, something unexpected happened again. The mountains and rivers smile, the mist and rain drift far away, the waves wash away. How charming is this mundane world? There, the monitor pointed in the opposite direction of Eunuch Tai's path. The leaders of various departments saw another red figure strolling through the empty streets. Unlike the previously muscular, sinister-looking effeminate men, this one had a more graceful figure and an even more alluring face. Though petite, he possessed an exceptionally graceful demeanor. Something even more formidable is coming, Nick Fury judged with his years of intuition. Fire, with a roar from the commander on the front lines, bullets, artillery shells, and rockets from helicopter attack helicopters rained down on the red-clad figure. With defenses under attack at every turn, the U.S. military completely unleashed its full force, no longer caring about civilian casualties. Officials had already warned the public not to join in the fun today, so who could blame him for courting death? Lin Hao remained motionless in the face of the ferocious firepower, but Sadako, unleashing her teleportation abilities, teleported from hundreds of meters to the defense post. What? Nick Fury's eye behind his eye patch widened in shock. What kind of speed is this? This isn't speed at all, this is spatial shifting. The professionals on the scene lit up. Amazing. How can the human body withstand the stress of spatial shifting? The technicians and bureaucrats clearly had different concerns. Faced with the sudden onslaught of the red-clad men, the soldiers on the defensive line immediately trained their guns on the sentry posts. Then, Lin Hao's controlled half of his body launched a move. He swung his sword horizontally, a soaring slash that flattened half the defensive line and reached the tall buildings on one side of the street. A single strike sliced through half the building. Oh my God, both the American officials and the fearless civilians hiding in the surrounding high-rise buildings were stunned by the red-clad man's sword. Nick Fury was stunned again. He immediately pulled out an old-fashioned pager, hesitating whether to press it. The enemy was only a few hundred meters away. Even if Big Mom could fly at the speed of light, she wouldn't be able to catch up. The man in red slashed with his sword and charged into the defensive perimeter. The trench trap was a joke to him. Flying slashes swept through, effortlessly, like a brushstroke painting. Tanks on the ground and helicopter gunships in the air were sliced apart like plastic foam. Explosions erupted, flames erupted, and wails filled the air. The man in red approached the White House at a leisurely pace, as if on a picnic. Hold, fire. The Secret Service agents outside the White House immediately pulled the trigger at the man in red. But the man in red dodged again, appearing atop the White House. At that moment, the eyes of the world were fixed on him. With such a blast in America, how could the other four gangs and other powerful forces not come to watch? For Japan and South Korea, even their father's festivities were a blast. Lin Hao controlled Sadako's body and suddenly raised the longsword in his right hand, swirling purple-red lightning around it. With a powerful swing, 100-meter-long flying slash, wrapped in purple-red lightning, soared into the sky. The clouds above the White House rolled violently, splitting to the sides and refusing to close for a long time. A sword ripped the sky apart. Wife, come out and see God. The Americans watching the scene and the people of various countries watching on the screens exclaimed in amazement. Nick Fury hesitated no longer, and was about to press his finger when a massive aura rose from the White House and swept in all directions. The American soldiers and combat personnel from various departments surrounding him foamed at the mouth and fell to the ground. The domineering aura, so powerful that it could affect physical objects, tore off a layer of grass, carrying countless military tents and bodies backward. Cracks covered the walls of the White House. Nick Fury, who was being carefully guarded, decisively fell to the ground. Lin Hao pointed at the spot, compressed the air with his finger gun, and fired a blast of air that hit the old pager, exploding it. The man in red, perched atop the White House, suddenly unsheathed his wine gourd, drank from it, and then uttered a resounding declaration. The sun rises in the east, and I alone am undefeated. In the room below, a cry of surprise echoed from beneath the resolute table. Go and call upon the Lord, please bookmark, please read, please vote. The author said this week's data is good, and it's even been recommended for next week. Thank you all for your support, everyone. Keep up the good work, and keep it up. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Eunuch Shi and Eunuch Tai's final battle on the top of the White House. Sir, within the blown-away Iron Man suit, the artificial intelligence Jarvis repeatedly called out to Tony Stark, who had lost consciousness after being struck by a Conqueror's haki. Seeing his master unresponsive, Jarvis activated emergency procedures, delivering a shockwave of electrotherapy to Tony's chest. Wow, cough. Tony jerked awake, followed by a short, sharp cough. What's going on, sir? You were just struck by a powerful energy shock. This energy isn't harmful to your body, but it directly attacked your consciousness, knocking you unconscious, Jarvis reported hurriedly. This feeling is so familiar. Tony recalled the figure in the black metal mask in the mountains of Afghanistan. But now was no time to dwell on it. He immediately observed the dramatic changes around the White House through the screen. Seeing the man in red standing atop the White House, Tony Stark's face darkened. Fuck, sir, I don't recommend engaging the enemy, Jarvis warned sensibly. We can't defend against the energy shock just now. You'll faint again. A few more shockwaves wouldn't matter, but if he fainted after just one shock, how could he fight? Lin Hao had no immediate plans to destroy the White House, as America's foundation wasn't in this building. If someone died, the consortium could choose another, and if the house was destroyed, it could be rebuilt. Taking action now would only inflame their shared hatred of the enemy. After shouting his slogan, Lin Hao glanced at Adam Smith and Johnny Tyson, standing on either side of the White House, and said coldly, "Begin, and complete your decisive battle." Eunuch Shi and Eunuch Tai finally turned their gazes of admiration, obsession, and even love away from Lord Dongfang. They exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with rage and a desire to fight. Damn you, bitch. Lord Dongfang is mine. They had just witnessed Dongfang Bubei's sword slash through buildings, his energy ripping through the sky, and they were filled with both shock and delight. So Lord Dongfang was so powerful. I wonder if I could become that powerful if I practiced my swordsmanship diligently. To vie for Lord Dongfang's favor, Eunuch Shi and Eunuch Tai were determined to annihilate each other and monopolize his favor. The red-clad figure atop the White House vanished in a flash, reappearing atop a distant tall building. Seeing this, the two eunuchs immediately snaked up and took their place at Lord Dongfang's previous position. The domineering aura Lin Hao had just unleashed only stunned the surrounding soldiers and personnel from the designated departments, not the civilians a kilometer away. Hearing the commotion outside fade, fearless individuals quickly rushed out to see what was happening. Great. All those in the way are dead. Brothers, hurry up. We can go watch the final battle. Joyful Americans and people from around the world rushed out of their hiding places, pouring towards the White House from all directions. They pushed aside the military roadblocks and found metal plates to pad the trench. In the scramble for them, many fell into the trench, suffering bloody hides and broken bones. No hardship could dampen their eagerness to watch the excitement. By the time the fastest group reached the White House, Eunuch Shi and Eunuch Tai were already engaged in a fierce battle on the rooftop. They gasped in amazement as they saw the clouds tearing apart in the sky. Oh my god. Are they that powerful? I want to be as strong as them. Can anyone tell me how they do it? Someone who had just witnessed Dongfang Bubei's attack stepped forward to warn him. The clouds in the sky weren't caused by these two, but by that one. They pointed at the figure in red, drinking and watching a performance on a distant high building. Most of the spectators were well equipped, not only with binoculars but also with cameras. They unscrupulously observed Dongfang Bubei and took photos of him. Lin Hao seemed oblivious, posing for his own pleasure. Today he was here to promote the Bixi sword manual. Despite the attention being diverted, Eunuch Shi and Eunuch Tai atop the White House remained unfazed, fighting with all their might. Boy, I'm Lord Dongfang's only follower. Eunuch Tai fought with a ferocious style, attacking without defending, ignoring the sharp adamantium that inflicted multiple wounds on his body. 3 months ago, Eunuch Shi was just an ordinary man. Although his wife cheated on him daily, he had never encountered a true villain. Eunuch Tai, on the other hand, was different. Frequently participating in underground martial arts matches, he was either the beating or the receiving end, and had long since cultivated a fierce aura. However, while Eunuch Tai had previously wasted some of his energy in breaching the defense, Eunuch Shi had taken advantage of his situation, temporarily parrying a wave of attacks. Then, Eunuch Shi keenly sensed the sluggishness in the opponent's internal energy. While Eunuch Shi had little combat experience before his debut, he possessed considerable talent. Furthermore, having spent 3 months in the forest practicing swordplay with undivided attention, his skill was actually a notch above Eunuch Tai's. While the difference wasn't significant, it proved immensely valuable at such a crucial moment. Seizing the opportunity presented by Eunuch Tai's shifting sword moves, Eunuch Shi channeled all his internal energy in a disparate thrust, bringing the tip of his sword to bear on Eunuch Tai's chest with the swiftest and most powerful force possible. Eunuch Tai was startled, but this only aroused his ferocity. Neither dodging nor defending, Eunuch Tai's longsword continued its slash towards Eunuch Shi's side. For some reason, perhaps jealous of Eunuch Shi's daily stream of women seeking his ravage, Eunuch Tai specifically targeted his kidneys. He knew the rumors were all nonsense, but he still followed his manly instincts. Both eunuchs, bloodied, used their free hands to continue the exchange, fists and palms clashing, each using the momentum to retreat and distance himself. By this time, a growing crowd had gathered. After snapping photos of Dongfang Bubei, who was posing without reacting, their attention turned back to the protagonist of the day. In the crowd, George Stacy hugged his daughter tightly, looking up at the battle between the two veterans and feeling deeply inspired. He had only practiced for a few days, so his swordsmanship wasn't particularly advanced, nor was his internal strength profound. The battle between Eunuch Shi and Eunuch Tai was like a guiding light, guiding Eunuch Qiao towards the future. As for the powerful Dongfang Bubei, the rational Eunuch Qiao knew he couldn't match him anytime soon, but a certain ambition had been planted in his heart. If he could do it, so could I. Not only Sheriff George, the new eunuch, but many veteran eunuchs who hadn't been captured also hid in the crowd to watch the fight. Some were horrified, some disdainful, and some, with a fierce desire to take their place, gazed with pilgrim's eyes at the still unrecovered clouds in the sky and at Dongfang Bubei, towering above the distant building. It turns out, when the sun rises in the east, I alone am invincible wasn't just an exaggeration. Master Dongfang is too powerful. I must become his sole follower. The two eunuchs atop the White House ignored the concerns of the spectators below. After a brief pause, they continued their charge. Swords clashed repeatedly, the two renowned metals of the Marvel Universe unleashing astonishing destructive power fueled by internal energy. Occasionally, a swung blade would strike the roof of the White House, leaving hideous scars. After nearly half an hour of fierce fighting, both eunuchs' internal energy was depleted, and they were gradually losing ground, but the outcome remained undecided. From afar, Lin Hao saw that the advertising campaign had achieved its desired effect. Several more flames surged from the distant sky. He instantly appeared in the sky and unleashed several more slashing blows. The missile, carrying a potent anesthetic gas, was destroyed by the slash, but the gas drifted away on the wind. Some of the spectators around the White House quickly fainted. Eunuch Qiao, watching the battle, was horrified and quickly retreated, his daughter in his arms. The two eunuchs engaged in the battle glanced up at Lord Dongfang in the sky, but he didn't respond and vanished. These two eunuchs were no fools. America had suffered such humiliation and outrage, how could the elite eagles let it go? They would surely send a massive force to support it, and the missiles just now were the signal. While each wanted to kill the other, neither wanted to die with him. One final move, to determine the winner, a matter of life and death, Eunuch Tai roared. Eunuch Shi, with awe, charged forward, sword drawn. Both men channeled their remaining internal energy, delivering a decisive blow. Neither anticipated how Eunuch Tai's vibranium sword would unleash all the energy it had absorbed. A blue shockwave sent both the men flying, landing in the crowd on either side of the White House. Run, the army is coming, so many chariots, so many soldiers, run, fuck you, Eunuch Tai spat, you're lucky. Although his expression was fierce, he turned and ran away. Eunuch Shi on the opposite side was silent for a moment, and also turned and walked away. Today's events were too big, and Hydra might not be able to save him. It's better to wait and see before considering whether to continue to be a superhero. Bitches, you're lucky. Thank you Brother Wasteland Law for the 1000 points reward. Chapter 50 To cut or not to cut, that is the question. Representatives from the 5 major nations gathered in the meeting room of the World Security Council, SHIELD's direct superior body. As soon as they sat down, before the chairperson called the meeting open, the American representative launched into a barrage of criticism at the lone Asian face. This egregious incident is a conspiracy against America by a certain country. The middle-aged Asian man glanced around, bewildered. What happened? The Russian representative, eager to see the situation unfold, fanned the flames. Don't you know? The White House has been desecrated. You even think about that? The middle-aged Asian man's face was filled with shock, followed by indignation. This is outrageous. How could they do this to the White House? It's just a building. With a stab, the American representative felt like he was being stabbed in the chest again. Fuck, the American representative roared at the middle-aged Asian man. How dare you say this has nothing to do with you? That woman clearly has an Asian face and speaks fluent Chinese. Mr. Arthur, I understand your lack of ability to learn foreign languages, but you can't assume someone is from a particular country just because they can speak a different language, the middle-aged Asian man sarcastically said. For example, I can speak English, French, Russian, and German fluently, but I'm still Chinese. Sorry, I forgot Mr. Arthur only has one in native language. You, the American representative pounded the conference table, glaring at the middle-aged Asian man. Wow, it looks like it's cracked. The big-haired representative, once again displaying his playful spirit, pointed at the table in front of the American representative and said exaggeratedly, I remember you haven't paid your dues in recent years. The finance department can't reimburse this table. I'm vetoing it. Fuck. The American representative glanced at his 2 subordinates, trying to rally support. The Gallic chicken looked up at the ceiling, while John Bull looked down at his shoes, refusing to respond. As the younger brother, forced to do so, they truly saw the Americans humiliated. While these two couldn't express their frustrations outwardly, they secretly rejoiced. The showdown between the 2 eunuchs atop the White House was a global event. Nearly every nation watched as America laughed at their foolishness, while simultaneously marveling at the might of Dongfang Bubei. They dispatched intelligence forces to America, attempting to locate this warrior. Of course, the Americans mobilized their full forces to search for Dongfang Bubei, but alas, he seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. After all, they didn't know that Agen wasn't actually human. While they couldn't find Dongfang Bubei, the CIA, the FBI, SHIELD, and even Hydra each captured a young eunuch with limited skills who hadn't resisted. With a great nation of America suffering such humiliation, these powerful agencies naturally showed no mercy to these young eunuchs. Nick Fury, having regained consciousness, personally entered the interrogation room. The young eunuch, captured by SHIELD, lay on a metal bed, his limbs restrained by thick, round buckles, and a needle poised to plunge into his head. Coulson, May, and Ward, 3 Level 7 agents, took turns, each employing their most specialized torture techniques. I'll tell you, the young eunuch's skills were limited. And his character was also lacking. Although he had the courage to cut himself, he couldn't withstand the prolonged interrogation by the professional agents. After witnessing Dongfang Bubei's might, the eunuchs feared the dangers of betraying Master Dongfang. However, the interrogation techniques developed by professional agents could only be mastered by those who had been tempered by long periods of counter-interrogation. Ordinary people would find it almost impossible to withstand them. Don't worry, there are still some steps to go. Coulson calmly continued the process, methodically applying the small tools in his hand to the young eunuch. At this moment, Coulson was like a devout sculptor, skillfully handling each tool, ignoring the wailing and focusing intently. Fuck it. I'm telling you, I'm going to confess. The young eunuch's emotions completely collapsed. Coulson continued to apply all the steps, carefully observing the eunuch's performance, and after a moment, he gestured okay to the director behind the observation mirror. Ask him who that woman is, whether they're part of a group, and most importantly, where their power comes from, Nick Fury said gravely. Upon waking, Black Egg discovered his old pager was broken. This meant he couldn't contact Carol directly and could only communicate remotely via a Skrull spacecraft in low Earth orbit. However, The Skrull's communication technology was naturally inferior to the pager Carol had modified using Kree technology. When the message would arrive, and whether it could successfully transmit through cosmic radiation, were all questions. Having lost a powerful ally, and now a terrifying figure capable of slashing the sky with a sword appeared on American soil, this made the severely paranoid individual feel deeply insecure. Coulson began to ask questions, and the tortured young eunuch revealed everything. The three Level 7 agents' expressions changed, and Melinda instinctively glanced down at Coulson and Ward, her gaze profound. Coulson and Ward felt a sudden chill and instinctively huddled their legs together. Even Nick Fury, behind the scope, couldn't help but look down. This was probably an instinct etched into the genes of males. None of the agents doubted the truth of the eunuch's words, having long noticed a chill in his crotch. Initially, they thought it was an accident, but they'd never expected it to be a prerequisite for gaining power. Nick Fury, recovering his senses, immediately pulled out his phone to contact the CIA and the FBI. He first released his own interrogation records, which naturally led to theirs. After comparing them, Nick Fury finally confirmed it. She's actually a man. Recalling the charming figure in red he'd seen at noon, he'd never imagined she was actually a man. Shaking his head, dismissing these useless thoughts, Nick Fury paused for a moment before making a quick decision. Find some men who've undergone sex reassignment surgery. With SHIELD's resources, finding a few similar test subjects would be easy. According to the latest data from the Williams Institute at UCLA, 5.6% of Americans identify as LGBT, roughly 14 million people. With such a large base, it's only natural that there would be many men willing to undergo sex reassignment surgery. Originally, these people had simply cut themselves open to follow their inner calling, but now, learning they could actually gain otherworldly powers, a truly unexpected surprise. Really? Alice, a New Yorker recruited by SHIELD, covered her mouth with her hand, unable to conceal her surprise. Can I be as powerful as that invincible Easterner? Alice, a transgender woman who had undergone surgery 8 years earlier, was delighted to have fulfilled a childhood dream of becoming a woman she had always dreamed of. Now, someone telling her that she, too, could be as powerful as the invincible Easterner in the news, was a true gift from heaven. The experiment might be risky, said good-natured Coulson, patiently explaining to Alice the harmless experiment. You must also sign a confidentiality agreement and promise to join SHIELD upon gaining power. No problem, Alice raised her thick-knuckled fingers and said with a sweet smile, hurry up. I can't wait. Several similar transgender individuals were brought before the young eunuch. The young eunuch, tamed by torture, numbly stepped forward, transferring his own internal energy to the subjects, leaving a seed in their bodies. He then used his own internal energy to clear their meridians. Even Lin Hao, who had copied the residual internal energy within Yang Guo's left arm and practiced diligently for nearly a decade, spent hours clearing Adam Smith's meridians. Naturally, these less powerful young eunuchs would take even longer. Fortunately, the American higher-ranking officials had become very patient in this matter. After all, to cut or not to cut, that was the big question. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.